97.7 The Game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Warriors back. Warriors this week is back with Evan Giddings alongside Dan Devone. Cam Williams behind the glass. Got you every single Saturday morning from 9 to noon and getting you set for a pretty big road trip for the Golden State Warriors as they are off to a 4-1 start to begin their season and now looking at 5 against some pretty decent opponents. But before we dig into all that and more here for the next 3 hours on Warriors this week, Dan Devone, my man, what's happening? What's going on?
What's going on with you? What's the latest? Are you all about the Golden State Warriors? I know that we had a level of trepidation, but I'm beginning to be one of those guys. You know what
You're sipping the Kool-Aid?
Oh, I tell you what. I'm going to the bar and I'm sitting down and I'm looking at that bartender and saying, "Barkeep, just give me a tall one. Give me that Kool-Aid all the way to the top, baby." And I'm throwing it back. I'm all in. All in on these dubs.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we had a conversation yesterday, and look, we'll get into all the different nooks and crannies about this team, our big takeaways. We're, as always, taking your calls and messages at 888-957-9570. We had a conversation on Steiny Guri yesterday for about 4 hours. I was a little surprised about the idea of what being all in means. Does that mean you're trying to go out and acquire a big-name star? There's been some names that have been floated. Yesterday was all about Giannis. I could throw my trade proposal at you if you want. Jimmy Butler's been linked to the Warriors in Sam Amick and Anthony Slater's latest piece. Or are you just all in on this roster? What does all in mean for you?
All in on this roster. I think you know me when it comes to, and we can go down this road if you want. Once again, we can revisit the offseason. But I am not about a big name. Do you really want Paul George on this team right now and his $212 million contract, making $53 million a year? And you will have given up maybe Kuminga, Moody's not here, probably Trace Jackson Davis and a couple of draft picks. Would you want that with Lauri Markkanen? Would you want that with even a Kevin Durant? I'm not in on any of those guys. Ev, the thing is with me, and why didn't you call me for this conversation? Because I would have schooled all you coconuts yesterday.
Well, I've been trying to call you. I can't get a hold of you. I mean, you're in 16 different time zones at once.
I think that in order to be good and relevant and have something where it's recyclable and you can do this over a period of time, have that quote-unquote dynastic run, you got to do it from within. In other words, you have to find your own. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I think you'd be hard-pressed, and maybe you can give me an example of a team that won a title. And remove LeBron James from the equation because he's the greatest of all time.
I was about to say.
But somebody that won it organically, that didn't do it with at least one or two players that they didn't draft or have under team control so that the money works and that that's done from sort of an organic place.
On a non-LeBron-less team.
Yeah, I think we got to throw LeBron out because he was the greatest, and I know what he did in Miami.
I was going to say the Lakers in 2020.
Same thing. But if you could remove LeBron, usually it's Milwaukee who got Giannis. Think of Denver and their big three, all came up with the Nuggets. We're talking about the Joker, obviously, and Porter and Jamal Murray. The Warriors, obviously, with their big three. I don't know. Give me a team, even the Boston Celtics, obviously, Tatum and Brown, two guys that came up through the draft. It doesn't necessarily work to try and piece together a team and saying, oh, I want that guy. He's one of the best in the NBA. Who do I got to give up? Whatever it takes. That's not necessarily has been proven, I would say, as being a winning formula in terms of titles in the NBA.
No, but it does beg the question why people keep doing it or people want to do it. Like the Brooklyn Nets were, a fully formed super team, so to speak. They didn't make it past the second round. You can look at what the Phoenix Suns are right now. Another common thread is Kevin Durant, but they haven't gotten very far whatsoever. In fact, they got to the finals before they decided to go out and piece KD with Booker along with Bradley Beal. So I'm with you that the idea of a super team to me is it's a little shoddy. Like it's not foolproof, certainly. And to be honest, it's not proven. But the idea of going all in on the piece that can get you to the championship, because take, I don't know, the 2008 Boston Celtics, for example. Like they cashed in all their trade chips to go get Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to pair with the homegrown star in Paul Pierce. That was something that ended up working. I mean, the Heatles are a bit different in a different category, but the Boston Celtics in last year's championship run, yes, they were homegrown, but they still cashed in a lot of trade capital to bring in a Drew Holiday, to bring in, although he didn't play much in the finals, a Kristaps Porzingis. So it wasn't as if they didn't say that we love Tatum, we love Brown, we're going to pay you handsomely, but we need something a little bit more. And you could make the case that Drew Holiday was the guy that got them over the top because he was the only one that had championship pedigree.
Yeah, but I would consider him more of a periphery piece, that you had a foundation.
Not the centerpiece.
Yeah, and then you went out and you went and found a complementary player, a real good one, but not somebody that you're building around. And I guess that's sort of my point. I like the Warriors as they currently stand. Like, I find this entertaining. Is it going to win a title? Probably not. But what it allows you to do is that you can transition then into finding maybe somebody through that draft and building a new nucleus and transitioning into something that's a little bit more organic. The idea of cashing in these pieces and trying to go get, what's the name that's out there? Giannis. Giannis is going to come over here, and so you're going to look at Milwaukee is not going to move Giannis unless you give them everything. They reckon Giannis isn't only a good basketball player, but I think you have to look beyond just the Bucks and what it is that he's done for the community in the city. And I really mean that. And I'm not getting hyperbolic here or theatrical. This is a guy who decided to stay in Milwaukee of all places. That doesn't happen. He is so significant, not only as a basketball player, but I would say as an icon to the economics that is Milwaukee. So, first of all, I don't think that they're going to move him before the trade deadline because he's so important to that team in so many different respects. But if they do, if we were to entertain that, you're going to have to give up everybody because this is Giannis and it's Milwaukee. And are you willing to do that for Giannis, who's now on, is he 30? Might be on the wrong side of 30.
He's
30
not. Going on 31, but he has. Did you know that this is Giannis's 12th season?
It's amazing.
12th season in the NBA. Now, he's been a first-team All-NBA member for the past 5 seasons. I think he's coming off a 76 regular season stint last year, though he was hurt in the playoffs. But someone like Giannis, to me, he's kind of in a separate category. By the way, do you have
to bring Thanasis?
Yeah, probably.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, at this, you could just, you're going to need a roster spot if you're going to gut the entire team to go get the freak. So you might as well just bring Thanasis over anyways. I mean, he could sit alongside Guy Santos and, hang out for garbage time minutes. The point being, I think Giannis is in a different category of superstar. Like, to me, that is, if you're going to get him, to me, it's different between going and acquiring. Like someone like Jimmy Butler, to me, is far more attainable because he has a player option next year that he may or may not opt out of, so that makes him an expiring. He's 35 years old. It doesn't look like he has much of a future in Miami. That relationship is coming to an end, and he's still got some decent basketball left to play. He's not Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a top 3 player in the league, and the amount of times that you have an opportunity to get one of those players seldom comes along. I mean, of course, people know about Durant, and that was a free agent acquisition, so they didn't have to give anything up. But that's not typically how it works. So, in regards to Giannis, all right, I'll just throw the package that we threw out yesterday. And there's some CBA technicalities, but my point is this, to me, would be about the best package that the Warriors could offer. So, leave the sub clauses out of this. Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, DeAnthony Melton, and some combination of 3 or 4 unprotected first-round picks with pick swaps involved.
I'm not doing it.
See, I don't think I would either, but you have to consider it.
You think about it.
Like, let me throw this at you. If the Bucks said that's what we want, because while I think other teams could create better trade packages for Giannis, if Giannis says, I want to go to Golden State, I do think that the Bucks, because of what you're talking about with his loyalty, his commitment to the community and those surrounding areas, they have to give him what he wants. And so if he says, I want to go play with Steph, I want to be a Golden State Warrior, and the Bucks say this is what it's going to take to get the deal done, you're still saying no. If you're Mike Dunleavy.
I'm thinking about it, but I think at the end of the day, no, I'm nixing that. And I would also add that I don't think Giannis, I think Steph might have been a lot more alluring to someone like that of Giannis 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Does he really have that sort of pull right now in Draymond?
I mean, after the Olympics, I feel like he does.
If I'm Giannis,
I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Steph this year because he's been out. But.
And I want to win, I'm telling my agent to make a call to Oklahoma. I'm telling my agent to let's go to. I like what they're doing in Cleveland. Talk about young teams. There's some other places that I don't know that Steph is somebody that I'm hitching my wagon to at age 37.
I agree with that, but I also think that the Warriors are uniquely positioned to go out and get a superstar because they have an aging one of their own. And also, unlike those teams you just mentioned in Cleveland and OKC, who, by the way, the Warriors are going to see at this upcoming road trip, they get Houston tonight at 5 o'clock, Washington on Wednesday at 4:15, and then Boston, Cleveland, and OKC on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday of next week. So we'll have time to chat before the OKC game. But they're uniquely positioned, unlike those other teams, because I don't think that OKC or Cleveland wants to gut their roster.
Yeah, well, if you're OKC, you don't need them.
No. I
don't think you do.
But how could you say you don't need Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Well, because
if you could get him, I think you probably would. But are you willing to give up all the young talent that you've accrued over the course of the last 5 years?
You don't need him.
But what young talent is on the Golden State Warriors?
Trace Jackson.
He's a second-round pick.
But he's talented.
He's
Podziemski.
Yeah, but he's not a Jalen Williams. He's not a. I don't know. The only guy who's been paid from the rookie class is Moses Moody.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, to me, the Warriors, and I think that's also why it'd be difficult in the grand scheme of things to acquire a Giannis, which wouldn't happen until around the deadline anyways. But the package that the Warriors could offer, I actually don't think that across the league, their young players are viewed as highly as they believe them to be. Like, they have more value internally, outside of maybe Kuminga, who we can get into later on, than other teams. Like, I don't think teams look at Podziemski and view him as untouchable like he supposedly was in the Lowry Markkanen deal.
You know what we suffer from?
Or non-deal.
And I'm guilty of this. I think you are as well.
Well, we just talked about sipping Kool-Aid at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing to sip that Kool-Aid. So you come and sit at the bar with me.
I want that purple stuff.
Right. Because this is what we do. And actually, before we go to the bar, we're going to go to the Zen Center. All right? It's up on Laguna and Page. All right? And services start at about 5:30. And this is the first thing that you'll learn.
Services.
Is that they'll say, Evan, actually, they won't say anything, but this is what you should do. And that is just be present. Be in the moment. Be about Cam Williams right now. Just be here. Because what we do as fans is that we want to think about is, first of all, is this sustainable, right? The first two shows we did is, can the Warriors keep this up? Can they thread this needle every night? Trying to play 12 guys. Come on.
We're waiting for people to file in
here?
before we dig too deep into this team.
Yeah, what are we doing here? And now that they've won a couple of games, well, how about a trade piece if this continues? If these guys, if they're proven commodity, maybe we can lure somebody like that, a Giannis. And all I'm saying, from the first row of the bar in the first row of the pulpit at the Zen Center, is let's just be present. Why can't we just enjoy this? Why not just get lost in this and be that guy in the 19th row chugging beers and going nuts and watching the Warriors and saying, yeah, we're going to win a title. Why not just appreciate a team that's 4-1?
Well, first of all, I can enjoy just about anything with 6 whiskey sours. But this is what we do. Every single week, you and I come together on Warriors This Week and discuss what we've seen. And over the last week, since the last time we talked, the Sunday game against the Clippers happened where Curry got hurt and Buddy Hield couldn't throw a rock into the ocean. And then they restored our faith, whether you're at the pulpit or a pew or a stool. They restored our faith by beating the Pelicans in back-to-back games, who, by the way, were, again, I don't want to throw cold water on this thing, but
banged up.
Pretty banged up, especially that second game. They were missing like 4 of their top 7 players. I know the Warriors didn't have Curry or Wiggins or Melton, but that's where I think that this team is far more equipped to handle and win games like that as opposed to last year, even the last 2 seasons, is that they're so deep that when they're missing a few guys, the rotation doesn't really shrink that much. In fact, it allows someone like Jonathan Kuminga to play around 30 minutes, which he wants to anyways. Like, those guys are fresh and ready for those games. And that's where I think this team can be better than last year. I just wonder when they play those top-tier groups, and that's why I'm so fascinated by this road trip, when they play better teams who are whole and the Warriors eventually get to full strength, like, how do they actually look? How do they perform in Houston against a team who, by the way, 2 nights ago just demolished the Dallas Mavericks, who I think are a pretty good roster. They got a pretty good team. They just ran them out of the gym. And the Houston Rockets as a whole, I think, are pretty clunky, inconsistent, young, prone to flare-ups. How do the Warriors play against them tonight? Like,
I go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just like, how do they look when they begin to get into the thick of things? Because you're right. I do want to be present. I do want to appreciate what they've done through 5 games, and I'll continue to watch. But they also had a hot start last year. Do you draw anything from that comparison, the fact that they were 5-1 and 6-2 to start last year?
I thought last year was a bit of a bubble. I did. And even when they got off to the 5-1 start, this is different. And listen, we could all be proven wrong, all right? They could maybe not win a game on this difficult road trip. Aside from Washington, they're going to get challenged. But
Jordan Poole's popping off, by the way.
The sniff test is a little different with this team. It just, you know what it is, Ev? Is that it looks like the joy's returned. It looks like the fun has returned. It looks like Warrior basketball back in the day, albeit the talent isn't nearly as good, pound for pound. But there's just something going on. There's something in the air here that maybe Steve Kerr stumbled on, where I think it's just, I turn on a Warrior game now, and I have no idea what the hell to expect. I have no idea who the hell's going to be a star. I have no idea who's going to get into double figures. What's Lindy Waters going to do? Buddy Hield going to be hot or cold? I don't know. Does it really matter? Because you got 5 other guys that I'm watching that potentially could do something on any given night. I don't know the last time I could say that about Warrior basketball. So again, just to live in the here and now, there's a joy and there's a fun quality that has returned to this team that I think has been sort of absent over the last couple of years.
888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan DeVoe, and Warriors this week, along with Cam Williams with you, 9 to noon every single Saturday here on your home for Golden State Warriors basketball, 95.7 The Game. Of course, we got a game later on today at 5 o'clock against the Rockets. Tim Roy will be live here on 95.7 The Game. I'll have Warriors live at 4 o'clock, and then Warriors wrap up after the Rockets game later on this afternoon. But let's kick things off with our first caller of the morning. Joe in the 818 wants to talk about a big fish.
SoCal.
What's up, Joe? How we doing?
Good. Good morning, guys. Hey, thanks for taking my call. When I heard you talking a few minutes ago, I said I gotta call in. You guys are talking about Giannis, and you know the way I'm looking at this is I'm enjoying. You know, the Warriors have won 4 championships, and so most teams, most cities don't even get one. So I've been lucky to be able to watch that with Stephen and everyone else. It's been phenomenal. But, you know, I think sometimes you have to go ahead and start to look toward the future. And right now, the way I look at it is instead of giving up the stars and the moon and everything else for Giannis, I'd rather watch this young team that's fun to watch with all these young players, with Kuminga, Podz, Moody, TJD. Even Wiggins is only 29. But the thing is, right now we're sitting with all these young players, and they're fun to watch. And we have all our draft picks, if I'm not mistaken. So why not go ahead and that big man that you're looking for, why not look at in the draft, the 25, 26, 27 draft? Sooner or later, you're going to draft probably a big man that will turn out to be a pretty good player. If you look at the results, a lot of teams have picked up good centers from around 15, whatever, down to 17. But the point is if they did hit on a young big man with all the young guys they've got, the Warriors would be in contention, I think, for years to come. So I'm not on that side to trade everything for Giannis to go for the title right now. I think we have an opportunity with young players and to add with our draft to keep the Warriors in contention for years. So what do you think?
Well, you're talking to a man, Devone, Joe, who believes the Warriors already have their big man of the future.
Is this about a big? Is that why we want Giannis? Because if I'm not
Trace Jackson Davis.
Well, I'm just saying, historically, have the Warriors ever had a big? I know Bogut.
No, the idea of I think he was talking about drafting one. Eventually they'll hit.
I mean, do you want Giannis because he's a big player?
I also don't think the NBA is telling you need a big. Like, you need, pardon me, you need size, you need length, but you don't need a traditional center.
No. I would argue that the Warriors have never had one.
I mean, they've had traditional centers in the past, but...
I mean, Bogut was the closest thing this franchise has seen to a traditional center in the last 25 years.
TJD is a traditional center. He doesn't play a ton, but...
Yeah, I'm just saying you have one now, yeah, in Trace Jackson Davis, who's still on the small side for a center, I want to say, but he's such a good complementary piece because while everybody's shooting the threes, especially the Warriors, you have this one guy who just plays 5 feet from the hoop, and he's all about slipping to the rim. He's all about pick and roll, and he has such good hands. I love his gait. I love watching that dude play, man. So he's a perfect piece to what it is that the Warriors are doing. But the Warriors, I mean, the centers, aside from Zach Edey, I mean, the NBA is a place where centers go to die.
I can't stand him. He's going to get phased out.
He's actually, I'll tell you what, he's been a surprise early on with Memphis.
Well, he stands out of a lineup. He's about 7'12".
The Big Maple, the pride of Canada.
Is that what they call him?
Yeah. He's a Canadian.
Well, he's done. Speaking of another Big Maple, we'll see one back in the starting lineup tonight, Andrew Wiggins. I do think...
Oh, the Andrew Wiggins hate starts early.
No. I liked what I've seen from Wiggins.
I love when you went through the trade with Giannis, the first guy you mentioned, Andrew Wiggins. Did I say Andrew Wiggins?
No, Wiggins has been good to start the year. And it's funny you mentioned the joy and just an overall different vibe about this team. Because I think the person who's probably represented that the most for me is Wiggins. Like he seems like he's playing with much more freedom than last year. And while I haven't been the biggest fan of his game, I also understand that if the Warriors are to keep this group together and if they are to be successful, like he does need to be a big part of that. So the fact that he's going to return tonight, I mean, I want him to play well. I'm curious how it impacts someone like Kuminga because I think the Warriors are, again, when they have all their players together, Kerr's job becomes more difficult as far as what buttons to push. And so far, he's pushed the right buttons, but I also don't think that the Warriors have necessarily been tested. And we'll see if they get tested tonight. The Houston Rockets are a team that plays frenetically. They get up and down. They, pretty much just play pickup basketball outside of Şengün. How do the Warriors match up against a rip-and-running team like themselves? Because the Warriors are much faster. We've discussed this. They're much more athletic, and they don't mind playing fast. Last year, it was like if they played fast, either they would wear down or teams would just run them off the floor.
Well, that's because they were old last year. The one thing that I just drove home and just continued, it was a mantra. I would beat that drum that this team needed to get younger. I do want to talk about Klay Thompson at some point because I think his removal has a lot to do with the success of the Warriors. I really, really believe that. Not only physically are they now younger, not only did you just remove $40 million that were dedicated to one player off the books, but I also think that whatever was going on behind the scenes took its toll on this team. So when I talk about the joy and you could see this team just smiling and playing with a level of energy, I think last year, Klay Thompson brought a lot of drama to this basketball. And we like Klay, but I just think that there was an ongoing feud that a lot of us weren't privy to between him and management.
What about this guy? We haven't talked about him a whole lot this season. Draymond Green. He compared how he feels this season to last season. All right, we'll have that for you in a moment.
By the way, Draymond.
I want to, yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's a fresh start. I know coming in, I had an awful year last year. It was just not right. Didn't play well. didn't act well. And, I want to, like you said, I want to show the real me. I want to show the growth. I talked last year about being a champion of change, arguing with referees. These guys are human. They make mistakes, and I'm trying to understand that. Such an emotional game. I play, one of my best attributes is playing with my emotions. And so taking that next step and learning how to play with those emotions, but knowing where to channel those is a big, important step for me and something that I'm really focusing on this year.
You buying it?
No, I love it though.
Well, I was gonna maybe tease it for the other side, but Devone can tell you how he feels.
Let's go to the.
Well, no, but it's funny you mentioned Klay Thompson being the common denominator for the issues in the team. Meanwhile, Draymond Green's a brand new man. He's been going to that Zen Center you were talking about earlier.
He is never going to change, and I love that about him. But it's always after a win or the team's playing well, he has retrospect, or suddenly he can recognize that he needs to grow up, and the referees are human as well. You get back to me after they win 5 in a row, and he feels as though he's getting jobbed. He will get a tee, he'll get run. But that's who he is, and that man can never change. Look, if he didn't change after knocking Jordan Poole into Salinas, or in the next Wednesday, after he took time out and considered and contemplated retirement. And then, less than 6 months later, he's going WWE on Rudy Gobert. So if he didn't change then, he ain't never going to change. But that's okay. We don't want him to change. So, no, I'm not buying that. He makes me giggle every time he says that.
Well, you do want him to change. You would prefer that he wouldn't get suspended for 25 games. To me, that is a change.
But he might. We live on that razor's edge with this dude.
I know. I'll tell you why on the other side I'm a little more optimistic about Draymond this year. I will. I do want to get into our biggest takeaways from the 4-1 start. First 5 games, relatively small sample size. If you have a takeaway, what have you seen, the fans, from the Warriors, the first 5 games of this season as they prepare for the first 5-game road trip of 2024-25? 888-957-9570 is the number. Comcast Business text line as well. Yes, 510. I know that 7'12" would mean 8 feet. That's the joke. Dan Devone, Evan Giddings, Cam Williams, Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game. We're back after this.
Your business needs a network it can count on.
Power's out.
Warriors, text as well, 888-957-9570. People don't like Giannis, Dan. They don't like him. They think he's a bad fit from the 510. From the 954 is with you. Klay, lame duck, playing for himself last season, weighed on the team. Everyone is all in on this season. That's from Justin. So people are speaking to you. People are on your side of this conversation so far today. You got to turn your mic on.
I am a man of the people.
Well, Zen or at the bar.
Listen, I think Klay just, behind the scenes, there was a lot of drama that we just weren't privy to. I just think that the sulking, the contract, the extension, all of that just sort of took its toll. And I think Klay, at some point, he recognized that he was out. And anytime there's a riff with somebody in management and you got to deal with them every day, it's a tension you'd rather not deal with. I'm a big locker room guy. Like, you got to get that right, because the locker room will oftentimes transfer to the floor or the field. And I think that, one more thing on Klay.
Be careful.
Well, here's the thing, is that I think that Klay Thompson, think about this. He had an offer to go to L.A., now, which is essentially home. And his old man, Michael Thompson.
For more money.
For more money. His old man's there. He's got a place there out in Malibu. His dad, obviously, is a color analyst with the team. It all fit, right?
Yep.
LeBron James.
There's an ocean.
They're offering you more money. Ocean for you to swim in. So why does he go to Dallas? That's sort of peculiar. And I'll tell you why. It just made sense to me. This is a revenge tour. He looked at the two teams, and he looked at the landscape of the teams that were interested in him, and he's like, I want to go to the team that's going to give me the biggest chance to win, so that I can look at the Warriors and say, look at me, bro. Look what it is that you screwed over. This is clearly a revenge tour on the part of Klay Thompson. Why else would he go to Dallas? He wants to make a statement. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love that about him. But make no bones about it. There's one reason why he's in the Lone Star State, and that's it.
Well, no, I was about to say it's because he wants to win. And I think it's as much about winning number 5, which, by the way, God, Klay is he's one of a kind, man. So he takes the number 31, right?
Yeah.
Because it equals 4 rings, which is the number that he typically tends to throw up in people's faces when he's pouting. But I'm with you. He wants to win. And I think he wants to win as much to get his own, 5th ring, as much to say, look what you guys are missing out on.
Damn straight.
Now, the one thing I also feel like I'm with you on in regards to Klay, and you didn't say it, but I think you'd agree, he wouldn't have worked on this year's team.
No.
Even if he got the contract that let's say in a hypothetical world, Klay Thompson got whatever money he wanted from the Warriors, and they are still running a 12-man lineup, that would not fly with Klay. If his minutes are limited, if he feels like he's coming out in different places at the wrong times, I do think that would be a problem. And so that is the biggest piece that was removed for me, is that distraction of having somebody basically be unhappy with their situation and their fit. Now, I think there's one player on this current team that is not satisfied with their role, but that player is not a starter, and more importantly, that player is not a hometown hero. That player is Jonathan Kuminga. I don't think Kuminga is satisfied with his role coming off the bench, and I don't think that it's a coincidence that yesterday there was a piece written by Sam Amick along with John Hollinger and Anthony Slater that, quote, rival executives believe the Warriors are more willing than ever to include Kuminga in a trade. So from one standpoint, I understand it, because, you probably have never been close to trading him beyond this summer and prior to, so you've never been more, willing to do it. But I think of all the players in this team that I think are unsatisfied, that aren't satisfied with what they have, JK is at the top of the list.
I would say that after the first couple of games of the season, but after what it is that I saw in the back-to-back against New Orleans, I saw him not only contributing, but body language is really big to me. I saw buy-in. I saw the guy with a big smile on his face, and I think as this goes along and he begins to realize that his role is going to be very dissimilar to what it was over the last couple of years, he's maturing. The guy's 22 years of age. I don't know that we can necessarily put him in that box and just label him right now after a couple of tough games That's an unhappy basketball player. Let's move him. I think that there's going to be more growth from Jonathan Kuminga, and as he contributes, as he learns to let this thing slow down and recognize what it is that they're doing here theoretically in terms of, it's a lot of players that are getting a lot of time, and you've got to earn your time. And I think that in the last 2 games of New Orleans, I saw sort of a different JK. And I don't know that it's necessarily somebody that I think is going to be as problematic as maybe, say, the first 2 games of that home, or the first 2 games of the season, I should say.
Well, I don't think he's going to make a stink, and I think that Kuminga is relatively, he's a bit misunderstood. I think that the language barrier sometimes makes him come across as frustrated or angry or pouty. His body language on the court sometimes is not ideal, but I think that's common for young players if they're not playing well. They get down on themselves. So I don't necessarily hold that against him. I think his camp speaks too much for him, and that's where people get the wrong idea about him. But JK himself has never struck me as a malcontent. The thing that I wonder about with him, though, and why I believe that he is not happy, so to speak, is because you're right. The last 2 games, you did see a different Kuminga. He played. And why did he play? He played because 3 guys were out. He played because one guy, particularly Andrew Wiggins, who is out, plays his position. Now, he got moved to the bench, which I don't think is going to change. Like when Curry comes back, one of the reasons that Kerr said he moved Kuminga to the bench is because they wanted more shooting in the starting lineup, and he wanted to move away from the Kuminga, Draymond, TJD front court. I don't think that's going to change when Curry comes back. And I think that's when things will start to get a bit contentious, because it's one thing to be removed for the betterment of you. It's another thing to realize that your role is going to continue to shrink unless you have it going. And so Kuminga, you're right, he's got to play and he's got to earn those minutes, but time is not something he's necessarily afforded because he's in a contract year. And you already saw him pressing in the first few games when he was trying to fight among 12 players. Well, now there's another guy in Lindy Waters who probably has a chance to play. I don't think that it's a conducive environment for Kuminga at this point, and why I think he's not exactly happy with the way things have gone.
Well, if you're the Warriors, I don't know that I necessarily agree. Was it Sam Amick that had that story?
Yeah, along with Slater. I mean, it's from rival execs. It's not the Warriors themselves.
Closer to the situation that I am, but he's your best athlete. I mean, he along with Wiggins are probably the 2 guys who can get theirs on their own. And so you have to think long and hard, especially if a guy's looking to mature. And I see buy-in, but again, if you're going to move someone like that, because you just don't have any of those players. Aside from Steph, and I would say Steph doesn't have that in his bag. Steph cannot just go ISO and take you to the rack. Steph will cross you up, step back, and shoot a 3. But if you're stagnant, and Kevin Durant was always the best at this, if they were missing 3s and they needed to score another way, KD would just say, give me the ball, I'll get to my mid-range, I'll get to the rim. But they don't have somebody when things sort of bog down that's just going to be able to create on their own. And the athleticism that he provides is something that, aside from Andrew Wiggins, who can do it to a certain degree, he's your best athlete on the team. So depending on what it is that you're getting back in return, and keeping in mind that the guy's 22 years of age, again, I just think if I'm management, I'm erring on the side of patience when it comes to JK.
But you don't have time to be patient, though. Like, you have to make a choice of how much you're going to give this guy. The other part of the article that I thought was a little eye-opening was the fact that the Warriors and Kuminga this offseason were quote-unquote far apart in negotiations for their contract. It was between $30 and $35 million.
Mm-hmm.
A $5 million gap to me is not that big. Usually if a team wants a player and the player wants the team, a $5 million gap can be bridged annually. I do think that's very telling that the Warriors and Kuminga were not able to come to a deal, and it wasn't a chasm. It was more of a stone's throw. So that also lets me know that the Warriors don't have a massive amount of confidence in Kuminga. They're hoping that he proves to them that he is the player that they want him to be, which is a future all-star, a future cornerstone piece of this franchise. But so far, he hasn't done it yet. And I think where he's at is feeling like, well, I want to prove to you guys that I am, but you've already you've already demoted me. You've already taken me out of the starting lineup and stripped me of that role that I'm trying to prove that I deserve. And now that Wiggins is coming back and at full strength, I think Kuminga is going to come off the bench because that's what's best for the team. But that's not what's best for JK. And JK doesn't, again, have a lot of time left because he's going to be in restricted free agency this summer. So to me, there is growing friction there that also stems back to last season and the season before when Kuminga has had people and obstacles in his way, such as Andrew Wiggins. So I that's something that I'm monitoring very closely because I thought it was noteworthy that the fact that they could not bridge a $5 million gap, that came to light.
I would just let it breathe. I know it's a risk, but you don't have to sign him this year. And I think Jonathan Kuminga...
Well, yes, you do.
Well, no, you don't.
Well, during the year you don't. But this summer you have to make a choice.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about this NBA season. So, again, I'm just erring on the side of patience because he just has to not only prove that he can be that guy, that star that they've been waiting for, but also now, on top of that, he has to prove that he can be a star within this new system, which includes 12 guys. And so all of that is just going to have to play out.
But he's not going to be a star in this new system.
He can.
If you're playing 20 to 25 minutes a game, you're not going to be a star. There's only one star in this team. His name is Steph Curry.
Well, there's got to be somebody else. There's got to be a number two. If he can prove that he can. But that
number two, I think, is going to change every night.
Well, if he's altering and he's sharing the number two with Buddy Hield or Andrew Wiggins, then I think in the eyes of the Warriors, he's become a star. Now, obviously, if I'm somebody that's going to trade for him, I have to take into account that, well, my team doesn't play 13 guys, and Jonathan Kuminga is going to come here to whatever that team is, and he's going to be my number two as a starter. So it just depends on how it is that you're viewing Jonathan Kuminga as it relates to what team he's playing on. Within the Warriors, where you're sharing the load with 13 guys, and he becomes a reliable scorer that's doing all the right things, and his rebounding numbers are up, and he recognizes spacing, and he's getting rid of the ball, and he's becoming that athletic star, albeit he's getting his 25 minutes, but he's giving you 15 points a game. I think he's become a star in terms of what it is that Steve Kerr's asking of him. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone with you on Warriors this week here on 95.7 The Game. Let's get out to the city. Well, stay in the city, I should say. Let's talk to Telmo. Where are we going? Where's Telmo?
Well, yeah, Telmo, where are you at in the city? What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm in Noe Valley right now. I'm actually getting into my spot. I got a huge catering today, but I was listening on the way, running some errands, picking up some things this morning. And I got to disagree with Dan, except on one thing. I completely agree that Jonathan Kuminga, as far as athletic ability, just raw athleticism, is probably the most gifted on the Warriors roster. But in terms of how quickly he's developing as a basketball player, I agree with Evan. I don't see him ever prospering or being his best version of himself, predicated on his game and his style of game and what he needs to become on the Warriors. Because here's the thing, you said, nobody can create a shot. Kuminga is not a bucket like that. He's just Kevin Durant as a bucket. There's guys that are just buckets. Kuminga isn't there. Even he's great when somebody gets him in a position to go to the basket, or he's cutting, or they throw him an alley-oop, but his 3-point shot's not great. Last year we saw it towards the end of the season. He made bad decisions driving the bucket. A lot of time it was out of control. He puts up bad shots, have turnovers, and one of the things is the body language when he's on the court. You look at somebody like Moody, who, and maybe just Moody in his head doesn't think has the potential to be the same guy that Jonathan in his head thinks he can be, or the people around him are telling him you should be. But Moody, whether he gets 2 minutes or 17 minutes or 22 minutes, he comes in, he plays hard. When people you got to give Jonathan more run, you got to give JK more run. Well, he's obviously not doing the little things that would warrant that. The other day there was a play where the ball went back the other day and Podz ran it down. Lindy Waters III ran it down, ended up getting the rebound. Kuminga just lollygagged, didn't make any effort, stayed on the other end of the court and waited for the ball to come back his way and cherry pick it. So when you look at somebody like Podz, the reason the Warriors didn't want to trade him away or didn't even consider it, they didn't just throw minutes at him, but every time he was on the court, whether it was effort, attitude, little things that he did that made him say, hey, we need to give this guy more minutes. So whether it's, the fact is, like Evan said, it's Steph Curry's team. It's always going to be that. Maybe JK needs to go to somewhere where they're going to feature him and feed into his potential in that style of game. But right now, he's a 15-point guy. There's a lot of 15-point guys in the NBA. To be a star, you got to become that 25-point automatic bucket guy every night. And I just don't think, while he's an incredible athlete, and I see why people are attached to that ceiling and that possibility, I just don't see him becoming the best version of himself on the Warriors.
Thanks, Delmo. No, look, I'm not trying to say that, and I appreciate all the points. Yes, Kuminga's not there yet, and I'm not trying to say that he'll never be that with the Warriors. What I'm trying to get at is I do think that there's growing friction between how the Warriors want to use him this year and what Jonathan Kuminga wants to prove this year, because I don't think their timelines are going to align. I don't. I think JK, to Telmo's point, wants to be the 20 to 25 point per game scorer that he'll probably end up being, but maybe it's at age 26 or 27. Meanwhile, the Warriors want Kuminga to be, to your point, the athletic, the fast, the defensive player that he can be right now, while also giving you 15 minutes or 15 points per game. That is not someone you pay $30 to $35 million to. Or I guess, if there was a gap, 35. And the extra $5 million was something they couldn't do this offseason. So again, I think there's a difference between how the team views him and how JK views himself.
I think Telmo made a couple of good points, that this isn't necessarily about what he does or doesn't do offensively, but it's the defense. And I mentioned this, that he has to understand rotations. And yeah, he also got beat on a missed free throw, which should have never happened. And so there are moments where he is the antithesis of a Podziemski. And I think that is really where there's a disconnect between him and Steve Kerr. I just don't want to go as far as saying there's friction between management and Kuminga wants this. I don't know. I mean, a lot of that is just conjecture. We've been proven wrong so many times, unless we know verbatim and Kuminga's in studio and he's telling you he's disgruntled. A lot of it is just, I've been doing this long enough and I've been wrong so many times that, and you could be right because it makes sense from afar, but I just don't want to go as far as saying that there's friction between the two because I just simply don't know the inner workings in terms of the relationship. You know what, though? When you think about that Jonathan Kuminga draft class, typically if I was to give you 1 through 8, 1 through 10 of a draft class in the NBA, how many guys would you say hit or were good players on the average?
In a top 10?
In a top 8.
Define hitting, like becoming stars or...
Stars are good players.
Out of 10 or 8, I don't know, 3, 4? 2
maybe, but I would say it's like 2, 3, maybe, because the NBA...
I would say 1 or 2 stars, and then the extra 2 guys would probably be like rotation pieces.
When you think about that draft class, I just saw this. Just look at this. Cade Cunningham, star. Jalen Green, budding star.
He's averaging 30 a game right now.
Evan Mobley, star.
Yeah.
Scotty Barnes, star.
Broken hand, got paid. Broken digit, but yeah.
Jalen Suggs, not a star, but a very...
Dude, you see his start to the season, though?
He's amazing. And watch out for Orlando, by the way. Josh Giddey, maybe the one sort of guy that you could say isn't necessarily not a bust, but not a bad player.
No, he's a good player. And actually, I think he's most akin to Kuminga from this standpoint. He clearly wasn't a fit in OKC. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. And it doesn't mean that Josh Giddey and his game can't help basketball teams. But with where OKC was trying to go, which was spread the floor, 4 or 5 shooters at one time on the floor. Josh Giddey wasn't the right fit for that team, and they were able to use him to go get a piece that fits them better in Caruso.
Yeah, Caruso. So Sam Presti's a little genius, man.
Dude, they don't even have their starting center.
That team, you know what's scary about OKC this year?
Everything?
Is not only are they young, but now they got a little swagger. After what they did last year. Last year, they were a little young, number 1 seed. Are we, playoffs? All this is sort of new to us. Now they're like, bring this crap on. Like now it's young, talented, and attitude. But just to finish it out, Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga, and Franz Wagner, just about every one of those guys in that 2021 draft, you're like, man, all right, that makes sense. Because typically, I could give you a draft over the last 25 years, and it's on the average 3 guys. And the rest, you're like, who? What happened to him? Oh, yeah.
Well, that was also something that stood out to me, too. So, like, Suggs, I think, got around 30 per year. I don't know if it was 4 for 120 or 5 for 150, but
every one of those guys got paid.
Yep.
Except one. That being Jonathan Kuminga.
The 7th pick. Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think that, it speaks to the larger direction of the NBA, which is you got to lock these guys in now for big money or bigger money, or you kind of have to let them go. Like, you have to make a choice. And that's where I think Kuminga is also in an unfair position. Dude, he's 22 years old. He's not what he's going to eventually become in the NBA. But because he got drafted to a team that was a title contender his rookie season in which he didn't play, he's behind the 8 ball compared to those guys. Wagner, look at the amount of games he's started. Barnes, the games he started. Cunningham, the games he started. Giddey, the games he got to play when OKC was bad before they got good and decided that he wasn't for them. Like, Kuminga has not had the runway, and that's why, growing friction might be strong, but I do think that Kuminga is looking at this Warriors team and wondering, when am I ever going to get the runway, if not now? Klay's gone. Wiggins has been out. Curry, Melton, Wiggins, not there, and I get benched? That doesn't sound like a runway to me. So I don't know. Maybe I'm smoking rocks. Maybe I'm onto something. But we're going to continue to dig deeper into the conversation as we roll on here on Warriors This Week. 888-957-9570 is the number.
Speaking of smoking rocks, I want to tease something.
Excuse me?
Draymond Green's podcast and Smoking Rocks.
Is that what it's called?
Next.
Well, they already have an All the Smoke. I think that's with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. Smoking Rocks podcast. By the way.
No, I want to tell you why.
Because of his co-host?
Oh, all right.
Because of his new co-host?
Why, is that already a thing? Have you guys talked about this?
No, but I do think it's funny that...
How baked is Baron Davis on that podcast? I watched that thing simply because Baron Davis is like you on a Friday night.
Hey, well, no, I like to sip a little more than I'd like to smoke. That's kind of an end of the night thing for me. The thing about B. Diddy is, first of all, God love him. He's a legend. He was my favorite player growing up as a kid, as he was probably tons of kids that are my age, or now adults that are my age. But we do have to talk about that other side. There's a couple of things I got to get off my chest about B. Diddy. All right, Warriors This Week returns after this on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570. Evan Gings, Dan DeVoe.
The 2024 presidential election.
yesterday, and friend of the program, friend of the Warriors, Bob Myers, is on the set before Orlando and Cleveland. So we're at the old ship, Steiny and I, and just kind of watching. And look, Bob's fantastic on television. I think he's also a pretty good color analyst when he's calling games. But I got to ask you, he dyes his hair, right?
I have no idea.
Dude, he's got a little salt and pepper on the sideburns. Isn't that a telltale that someone,
he's actually
uses a little product? I mean, he's got a great head of hair.
I like him.
He's awesome.
He's transitioned really well into that. I thought he had a role with the Commanders.
Well, he was a consultant for was it the GM hiring, which eventually went to Adam Peters, who was formerly with the Niners. So I think it's kind of like a temporary thing.
I used to see him on the Lion Street steps during the pandemic. So it's these...
I think he still lives in Russian Hill.
Yeah. Is it Russian Hill or is he Pacific Heights? Russian Hill.
They all blend together. Yeah. Those uppity...
Well, listen, man. At least he's in the city.
High rises.
And he used to run the steps. I didn't know him, but, we would make eye contact because he'd be coming up. Our time, whatever. I'd be going down the steps, and you start at the bottom of the steps, and you run up the Lion Street steps. Which is, well, it's serious. I mean, it takes.
Trying to scale Everest.
And I remember this was it was the LaMelo Ball draft in Weissman, and it was either going to be Weissman or LaMelo Ball. And boy. I saw him one time, and I just said, "Dude, do not do LaMelo. You can't do LaMelo."
Oh no!
Yeah.
He listened to you. Well, that was a poor decision.
No, he just said, he just waved me off. He's like, I don't even want to hear. He was not friendly. He just, not now.
Well, you're trying to give him draft advice while the guy's working out. It's like the worst time to talk to somebody. Well, it's also COVID. I mean, respect the 7 feet, dude.
Yeah, no, that's true. But he's a very much a Pacific Heights guy. He's a pretty boy, man. He's a SoCal pretty boy, $5,000 suit sort of player. So, yeah, there's a good chance that he's doing whatever it is that he's got to do.
He also is very nice. I think he's pretty approachable. Maybe you just caught him on a bad day. Woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. You just got to stop with the tears.
I feel like all you city guys just don't like people from other neighborhoods. Like, this is something that I've noticed. See, Cam and I are from the East Bay. We all get along. Like, whether you're from Antioch, whether you're from Emeryville, El Sobrante, Hayward, the Dro, it doesn't matter because you're an East Bay kid. All you San Francisco folks, yeah, that's right. I'm talking to Steven Risotto in the back, too. He's from Reardon. All you city guys try to divide each other. That's what they do. Oh, what neighborhood are you from? What neighborhood do you live in? Oh, you're Pack Heights. Oh, you're down in Westlake. Oh my gosh, Lake Chapeau. Where are you from?
It's the way it is.
You're
man.
all one. You are all one.
It's like Chicago. What side of the city are you from? New York. What borough are you from? I mean, the minute Steven Risotto told me he's from Reardon, now he says hi to me in the morning, I give him the hand. I'm like, bro, come on, man.
Nice dead to you.
Got nothing to do with you. By the way, Rosie had some amazing intel.
Yeah.
Jonathan Kuminga's little brother.
You just go straight to air with it? Okay, first of all.
I was playing at Reardon and wanted more time. Does that sound familiar?
I don't think that's a bit, yeah.
All right, should we not go there? Rosie, did I just get us all in trouble?
No, he was listening anyways. But we weren't talking about Kuminga, and I do think there is something to the fit. Again, why we're talking about JK is, all right, biggest takeaways from the 4-1 start for the Warriors. For me, Dan, it's so far they're able to win 2 games without Curry. Like, I think that's big. Last year they were 3-5 without Steph in games. They're winning with their shooting, and they're also winning with their defense, which was apparent in the back-to-back against New Orleans. And then the third biggest piece is, to me,
I would invert those two.
What, defense and then shooting?
Yeah.
Well, they're shooting like 45%.
Well,
also the defense.
What creates the shooting?
Yeah, but the defense is a bit skewed, again, because you're playing Portland and Utah. Like, don't get me wrong, it's been really good so far.
If we're assessing the team up to this point, I would start with the defense. I think they're number 2 with Oklahoma. The only 2 teams holding their opponents to under 100 points. Yeah,
defensive net rating, they're defensive rating, they're number 2 in the NBA, which is great. They're also shooting the hell out of the basketball. But the third part about it to me is again, like, what's going to happen with the vibes, right? They're having fun, they're playing with joy, they're strength in numbers, but what happens when they begin to face some adversity and Steve Kerr is trying to sell 12 or 13 guys who have egos, whether they're healthy or not, they're egos, that this is the way that things should go. So I do think it's important that someone like Curry is obviously bought in and playing well. I think it's important that Draymond Green appears to have altered his mindset.
For now.
But I do wonder how the Wiggins and Kuminga pairing or non-pairing is going to impact the team. Because I think they're both very important players to this team. Wiggins, more so. He's more established. And I think his game he's been here a little bit longer. He's proven it at a higher level. But I think Kuminga could be the guy to help this team take the next step if they're not going to break this thing up and go down the trade route, which we ditched earlier.
Well, I think a lot of that stemmed from, again, the bad start of the season for Jonathan Kuminga. And I think as Jonathan Kuminga begins to play better, and with that comes confidence, then all of that will be resolved. How is it going to, I know on paper it sounds as though, how are these two going to coexist? They want to play the same position. But if Jonathan Kuminga gets into a role where he's contributing and he's confident and he's playing well, then I think that everything will work out in the end. We just have to let this breathe for a little bit. We want to rush to judgment and label who this team is. Again, and I'm living in the moment. I'm being present. And I'm enjoying what it is. I came into the studios today and I am not going to let Evan drag me down and think about, is this sustainable? Can they do this in a month? What happens when they play a good team? No, I'm going to enjoy what it is that this team has been doing up to this point. I think that they have been, along with the Cavaliers, Kenny Atkinson, by the way.
Okay. All right.
What? Why you are the youngest, most talented broadcaster in the Bay Area, but you're also one of the grumpiest young men I've ever come across. What's wrong with Kenny Atkinson?
I'm an ass. All right. That Cleveland team is pretty damn good before he got there. Seriously.
No, but
the only thing you had to do was tell Max Strus, who's hurt, to not play.
But you could say that about listen.
Yeah, I don't think Joe Mazzulla is a great coach. His team won the championship last year.
Is Steve Kerr a great coach? Could you make the same argument with him?
Well, but Steve Kerr's done it over the course of 10 years.
But that's my point, is that it didn't happen under Mark Jackson. It didn't happen under Atkinson's predecessor.
No, but I think where
Look at J.J. Redick.
Where Kerr gets credit is for after the Kevin Durant years, in addition to the heights that he helped take that Warriors team to.
But
people were poking holes in Kerr first 5 years.
He was signed, sealed, and delivered in New York.
Well, until he told Phil Jackson to kick rocks. But by the way,
just think about that. You ever seen that show?
Imagine trying to run a basketball team from the opposite side of the country. Phil Jackson lived in Portland.
That was a mess.
Running the Knicks.
That was a mess.
Knicks are, you're out in New York. How do people feel about Cat? You just had 44 and 14, right?
He's a talented. I love Karl Anthony Towns. Think about all the crap that dude's had to deal with. He's the number one in Minnesota. It's his world. Along comes Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards. Now he's got to take a back seat. He's cool with it. Do you ever hear him chirp? And here comes Rudy Gobert. He got to split time with this coconut. Do you ever hear Karl Anthony? Then they ship him out of town, and he's in New York. He just balls. He is one of the most talented. I would say him and Jokic. And I would even say I won't go there. But there's an argument to be made that those two are the most talented in terms of what it is that they can do. He can't pass as well as the Joker, but he can shoot threes better than him. His mid-range, his left hand, his up and out. Karl Anthony Towns is a baller.
No, he is. No, I didn't mean that jokingly. And actually, I gained a newfound respect for Cat. I could never really kill him after what he went through with his mom and COVID.
Yeah.
So, no, he's had to go through a lot of stuff, and he's still been one of the most impactful basketball players. I didn't like what the Wolves did, and I understand it was financial, which is also something that factors into the Kuminga conversation we're having. I think a big reason the Warriors didn't want to necessarily pay him is because they shrunk their roster and their salary this year, and they've been able to stay at or around the same level. It remains to be seen how good they can be, if they can be a playoff contender, maybe a championship. Who knows? But the thing about Cat...
Oh, easy.
All right, first of all, hour 3, Dan Devone's bold predictions. I'm going to pry him out of his mouth with pliers. The other part about Cat, and in general, I don't like when teams have the kind of success that the Wolves do, and then they break up the team. Like the Wolves were a 20-point, they beat Denver. And then I thought that they were a better team than Dallas. I don't think that they were ready yet. A lot like OKC. I think OKC, one of the reasons they're going to win like 60 or 65 games this year is they're hungry. Because I think deep down they knew that they were better than the Mavericks last year, or more talented than the Mavericks last year. But they didn't yet have the experience, the wherewithal, the know-how to get it done. That's what I think drives them this year. The Timberwolves were essentially robbed of that opportunity because front office decided they didn't want to pay or dip into the second apron. Whether it was detrimental or not, they broke that team up. And that's why I think they had a nice win last night against Denver, who's got their own problems. But the Timberwolves, I think, are going to struggle this year just because you're trying to recapture chemistry that you basically stripped it of.
Yeah, it just came down to who you're going to pay here. And it was a dollar and cents move.
Well, who they couldn't pay.
And they've got to fix their ownership because it's just a matter of time before that sort of trickles down. I mean, is A-Rod and company own the team? I mean, they're going to litigate this.
Well, you're not a big A-Rod guy right now.
No, I'm not an A-Rod guy.
For other reasons.
Yeah, you don't need to get
you're
into
not
that.
a big A-Rod guy.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. How about the Lakers, by the way?
What about them? By the way, shout out to the 510. Always enjoy your show, fellas. Props to you, Dan and Evan. Go Warriors. I'll put 100 on them tonight at the Pepper Mill. Well, on the spread or just straight up?
What's the line?
Vamp for a sec. Talk about A-Rod and I'll check.
What, the World Series story?
No, you guys have similar skincare programs, it seems.
Me and A-Rod. You know, A-Rod and I lived in the same building.
Warriors are plus 4.5. Wait, what?
Yeah, in Seattle.
He was slumming?
No.
This is before he got the $200 million.
Well, this is Seattle. But I lived in the Harbor Steps, and he hated me because the doorman. We both worked out at the Seattle Athletic Club.
You guys look alike?
And there was like a little shuttle bus that would take A-Rod to the Seattle Athletic Club, and then it would drive him back. And the shuttle would be waiting for him. And the doorman would tell A-Rod, hold on, A-Rod. Dan goes to the Seattle Athletic Club too. I think he's going to be coming down in a bit. Like, just hold on. And so I would come downstairs, and the doorman's like, oh, A-Rod's waiting. I'm like, my man, you don't have to do that. Because I get on the bus, and it'd just be me and A-Rod on this little shuttle that would go to the Seattle Athletic Club, and A-Rod wouldn't even look at me. And he's just like, dude, I got to wait for you. You know who I am? And I told the doorman, I was like, dude, do not put me in that position anymore. I'm good. I can walk to the club.
Well, what do you mean? That's your fault. If you were on time, the doorman wouldn't have had to do that. And A-Rod wouldn't have had to wait for you.
Yeah, but I didn't.
Sounds like A-Rod was prompt.
No, well, I wasn't waiting for anybody. It just, the doorman called me and said, are you going to the club this morning? Like, he buzzed up to my room. And I'm like, yeah, I was going to go. And he's like, well, the shuttle's going right now. I'm like, yeah, there was no times. This is, so anyways.
Well, you as a St. Ignatius kid should know, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late.
And then we resurfaced again in New York. And there's a woman by the name of Lindy Beauville. And I'll just leave it at that. So he was with the Yankees, and I was
also
in New York.
with Mitch Kupchak?
Or? We just don't. I'm not a big fan of the guy. I mean, as a player, he's great. It's just there's some people that you're just like, that's just a wrong sort of cat.
Yeah, he's greasy as hell.
All right.
No, he is. Well, no, he is. I mean,
all right.
It's something about him.
Yeah, right? Phony. It's so phony.
Even on the broadcast, you can
phony
tell.
As hell.
You can tell.
Just be more genuine, man. No, JJ Redick in the Lakers. Look, if we're gonna talk about Kenny Atkinson.
We'll talk about a phony.
I used to think that, and I was out on JJ Redick, but I got to give him. I think there's, we like the culture word. Something's going on out there in LA.
Who do you think's gonna win more games this year, the Lakers or the Warriors?
Oh, that's a good one. Really good one.
I won't get you to bite. Honestly, I didn't believe much in...
Wow, that is really, you know what? I'll give you an answer, but, you got to give me a while. But that's a good one. You know what they're doing in L.A.?
Well, I think it is a good question.
He's actually, and this took some stones, he's deferring away from LeBron and is putting it in the hands of AD. He's like reducing, and LeBron's cool with it. He's like, you know what? You're going to be a number 2 to AD.
Well, I think to your point about Kerr and... let's say Kenny Atkinson. I do think that this is where those kinds of coaches... Well, Atkinson had prior experience as a head coach, so it's not exactly the same. But Redick and Kerr, I think, come from a similar place of they weren't in the game. Like Kerr was as a GM, but then he took a break. He was a broadcaster. So when you're not inside basketball, I think you're able to view from a bird's eye particular teams just with kind of a generic understanding. Like JJ Redick probably looked at the Lakers last year as being very simple. Here's their best 5-man lineup. It's, well, at the time, it was, D'Lo, Reeves, LeBron, AD, Hachimura. So we're going to start those 5 guys. It's that simple. Their best player, with LeBron being 40 years old plus, he's almost going to be 41, it's Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
And if you want to make it through the entire year by preserving LeBron for the time that it matters, you got to lean on your younger guys. And so that's where I also think JJ Redick has more empowered that team. Is the bench is, decent. I think although weirdly, one of the other players in that Amick article that I was referring to about JK that's deemed most tradable around the NBA was Austin Reeves. Which I found kind of interesting. And I don't know if that's because
that's weird.
They don't I think he's under contract. Maybe they want to.
They just re-signed him last year.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
He's getting a lot of. Well, you mentioned Steve Kerr and JJ Redick. There's a lot of parallels there. I think that they're both guys that sort of JJ Redick I think was more of a star, was drafted a lot higher, but he's able to relate to the guys, the Jackson Hayes, if you will, the guys on the sort of the end of that bench. And that's sort of what Steve Kerr's, I think, always been able to do. And one of the reasons why he's been as good as he is that obviously you have your stars. You got Klay, you got Steph, and you got Draymond and Kevin Durant and all these stars throughout the years. But he was always relatable to those other guys to keep them engaged, Those guys 6 through 10 on the roster. Because that's who Steve Kerr was. Steve Kerr was a guy, he came in the second round with Phoenix. He had to shoot his way onto teams. He had to prove that he can get in the rotation with Chicago and win titles. Same held true in Portland and San Antonio. So there's a relatable aspect I think he has with some of those guys at the end of the bench that he's always been able to have buy-in from those guys. And I think J.J. Redick is doing that with Caleb Martin and Jackson Hayes. You're seeing part of that with the Los Angeles Lakers. Look at nothing about me likes J.J. Redick. You talk about a life of a boulevard of unblinking green lights. The guy goes from Duke to the NBA to a podcast to the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Everything about him says, yeah, I don't like this guy, but I do have to recognize that he is changing the culture out there.
Well, I also think where he shares a similar quality to Steve Kerr is they're both at their core red asses.
True.
They're both competitive as bleep, but they don't show it publicly. I think JJ Redick probably lets on, a little more than Kerr does, but I bet Kerr was that way when he was JJ Redick's age. I think he's probably just learned to hide it a bit more. But there's the relatability of having multiple roles throughout the NBA. Redick's probably a better player, or was a better player than Kerr was. But they've all done it. They've been the 12th man. They've been starters. They've won. Well, Redick was a part of a team that went to a championship, but I don't think he's won a ring. But he's played with players that have. The difference, I do think, is in the communication, because Darvin Ham was a player. He was a back-of-the-end rotation guy, but he clearly couldn't communicate the way that Redick could. I also think he placated too much at the beginning, to LeBron. I think that Redick had more of a relationship with LeBron James, and not just because they hosted a podcast together, but there was more of a mutual respect that was already built in. Darvin Ham, I feel like he placated too much at the beginning, and by the end, LeBron just didn't respect him. But that doesn't appear to be the case now.
Well, that's a perfect example of how not just anybody can step in and you'll be good. So Kenny Atkinson is doing something different. Because keep in mind, Darvin Ham inherited a team that the year prior went to the Western Conference Finals. All he had to do was just roll out that starting lineup, plug and play, and you win. But it's not as easy as that. And so I get it. Kenny Atkinson is taking over a good team, but 5-0 is 5-0.
No, it is. And And again, this is why I think that what's it in John Wick 4? The commerce of relationships. Oh, that was John Wick 3.
Didn't see it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a good series. You should get on it. From the 707, you're right. J.J. Redick was very rude to a 95.7 producer once, and I do think he's kind of an ass, but he's also so far helped this team to a nice start. The thing about Atkinson, and I don't know what his role was really the last few years in Golden State, but he has built-in relationships with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was the head coach in Brooklyn for Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, who are now big pieces of that rotation. So he has, I think, again, similar to Redick with LeBron, different level of players, but he has a built-in respect when he steps into that situation, and he doesn't have to earn it, at least with everybody. Now, the guy that you have to monitor, of course, is your best player, and that's Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan Mitchell, I don't know what you think of him, but I think the jury's kind of still out as to how much of an issue he sometimes can be. He's a great basketball player. In fact, as far as scores, he might be the most underrated player in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell's a dog, but he's been in a couple situations now where, he hasn't really liked some of the coaching staff. I think he was a big reason why J.B. Bickerstaff is no longer on the team. And I thought Bickerstaff did a pretty good job in Cleveland. But how Kenny Atkinson can take what he had and being able to learn a little bit under Steve Kerr, but I think largely just waiting for his opportunity to pounce. He's found the right situation, just like Steve Kerr found the right situation in Golden State, and at least so far, how J.J. Redick's found the right situation in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think for Donovan Mitchell, it's not so much getting along with Kenny Atkinson or Bickerstaff. It's Darius Garland. Because if those two are on the same page, that's as good of a backcourt that you're going to see in the Eastern Conference.
Offensively. I don't know if they can guard much.
We're talking about J.J. Redick, who was one of the most hateable guys when he was in college.
Well, he still is.
Yeah, I was never a J.J. Redick guy. In fact, he's a SoCal guy.
He's got a very punchable face.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, where I was going to go with that is because he's a SoCal guy. Because those dudes, pretty boys like that with a little attitude, always somehow gravitate to L.A. Same with Freddy Freeman. Yes, I know he's fresh off the MVP, but
he's a great guy.
Oh my God.
You don't like Freddy?
Freddy, that's my problem with him. Everybody loves Freddy. The day, when I went out on
He's
Freddy,
literally one of the most likable athletes on the planet.
Yeah, but there's a phony factor. When he cried when he went back to Atlanta, I'm like, no.
He didn't choose to leave. His agent messed that up.
You don't cry. There's no crying in baseball, especially when you're pulling down $27 million. Don't make me do my Freddie Freeman. I was doing nights here, 95.7 the game, and for about 10 days I did the Freddie Freeman, and it got a lot of play.
Well, you'd be able to punch him. He's got fake teeth.
$27 million a year. And I've got to play in L.A. where it's like 85 degrees every day. I don't know how I do it. I just don't know how I do it. Freddie Freeman, MVP, and J.J. Redick. Go to hell, the both of you.
This is where, so we're not going to be able to get hot takes out of Dan. We can't get predictions, but we can develop a most hateable list. And what was it? The most punchable faces.
I'm trying to distance myself from that. I don't promote violence.
The MPFs. No, you don't promote violence. You just, I don't know, every once in a while, you got to tell it like it is.
It got to a point where, what's the guy, Grant Cohn?
Yeah.
Because I didn't put him on the list, but they had him at the top of the list, and he had to respond to it on his podcast and said, who the hell is Dan Navona? What's an MPF?
You got on his pod? Why?
I didn't, but apparently there were people that were obviously
you wouldn't know. You're
show.
not on social media.
So anyways.
You stay off
But I heard about
Maybe that's why you could talk about most punchable faces. You don't actually have to have people on your phone tweeting at you.
There you go. We didn't get back to...
Who's the most punchable face in the Warriors?
We teased... I don't think they have one. Well, no, I'll find one.
All right, we're going to workshop that. In the meantime, yeah, what you're going to say something?
Well, Baron Davis, B. Diddy. We got
boy. Oh,
the
actually,
podcast.
We got to hit a break. Yeah, we teased that for the last half hour. Didn't talk about it. I promise we'll get to it on the other side as we roll on here on Warriors this week. We're all over the place. Someone call in and steer us back in the right direction. I'm right with you, 415. Dan's a coconut. Quit talking about Freddie Freeman. 888-957-9570 is the number. We're going to get back into the Warriors on the other side as we roll on 95.7 The Game.
The NBA is finally back. Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Cam Williams, Steve Risotto, rocking with you for 3 hours before the Warriors take on the Houston Rockets tonight at 5 o'clock. Warriors live at 4 with yours truly. Got you for postgame as well in between Tim Roy. What?
Forgot to get water during the break.
Well, you can go do it right now. I'll vamp for a little bit.
That's all right.
Well,
Where's Reardon? Get in here.
Well, we do have to talk about...
Always take advantage of the Reardon
your
guy.
boy.
Who?
Well, Baron Davis.
Oh, yeah.
So, Draymond Green and the Draymond Green podcast,
Baron Bong Davis,
appropriately named, has a brand new co-host this year. And actually, I don't think we have any Draymond sound, but at least from the podcast. But B. Diddy's on, or sometimes he's also not on. I feel like I haven't really heard him much in all the clips that they cut. And so I'm not really sure when he's on the podcast and when he's not, and how often they're recording.
I want to say he's there every time.
Okay. So, Baron Davis, local legend, Warriors favorite, we believe, star.
UCLA Bruin.
Smokes a lot of weed. That's kind of my big takeaway from Baron Davis through the first umpteen episodes that he's done with Draymond. He's awesome, by the way. I don't want this to come across like I don't like Baron Davis.
No.
He's a perfect co-host. I'm just assuming it's if and when you can get him on.
And it's sort of an unusual pairing with the two because he is just... So I was listening the other day, and they're somehow talking about Detroit, because obviously that's where Draymond's from, and they're talking about the hotels that they would stay at when they were playing the Pistons. And he goes on a tangent, and I don't know what it was he was smoking that day, but he's just got this, he's got this permanent little grin, and even Draymond's like, where are we going? He's like, you remember... Eddie Robinson, you remember E-Rob? And he goes in this story how E-Rob got this van, this tricked out van that he invested in. And he said that this thing had the bucket seats, the rims. It was fully loaded. And so you got it. I can't do it justice. Only he can tell the story. And he's like, so I was in Detroit and I said to him, E-Rob, man, let me get that. I'm going to go get some food. And Eddie Robinson said, yeah, sure, go ahead. You can use the van, but it doesn't turn left. So
you can only make right turns in this van?
So Eddie, oh, my God. So Baron Davis is telling the story, and he's stoned, I think, of how he's trying to get someplace that's less than a half a mile away, and he's making all these right-hand turns. He's like, he wouldn't. He's just laughing and talking about it, and he's rolling this big van that can't go left. And Draymond's just like, I don't know who put us together.
Dude, first of all, he's a funny guy. He also knows what he's doing. I remember Baron Davis had this run of appearances on the Dan Le Batard show when it was on ESPN. And I was a loyal listener back in the day. And he basically had this bit. So anybody who knows the Le Batard show knows they have this, cast of characters, right? And one of the characters or producers, his name's Roy. He's the only black guy. And so they had this running bit that Baron Davis would not answer questions from any of the white or Cuban guys.
Well, there's one Cuban guy.
Or any of the, I think others. But he would only answer questions from Roy. But Roy doesn't speak. Like anybody who watches the show knows that Roy is very soft-spoken, doesn't really like to talk that much.
Thin guy.
Yeah, he's also the biggest hockey fan. Among the show members. And so Dan would ask Baron Davis a question and he would give him like a 2-word response. Then Stu Gatz would ask a question and you give him a 2-word response. And then Roy would ask the same question and Baron Davis would go on this 2-minute, very thoughtful, eloquent answer about whatever Roy asked him. And so basically it just became this running bit that Dan would have to ask the question, then have to ask Roy to ask the question.
Well, that's hilarious.
Davis. It was really funny. I love Baron Davis. I think he's a great addition to the podcast. Also because, to your point, he keeps Draymond Green honest and also on his toes because you don't know where Baron Davis is going to go with any conversation. But as it relates to the Golden State Warriors, the other player that we were talking about during the break who I love his demeanor, not because he smokes weed or can't make a left turn, but it's Lindy Waters III. This dude...
He's your guy. You were on him before
I love
else.
Lindy. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have loved Lindy for a while, and it's probably because he was a member of the OKC development system, and It feels like every guy they put out is going to be a dude. But look, he had his breakout game on Tuesday, got put in the starting lineup on Wednesday, and it's probably back to the bench tonight with Wiggins coming back, or probable to come back. But he's going to help this basketball team. He could play.
Well, now they're 13 deep.
But yeah, Kerr literally said that.
But fill it in, the backstory on this guy, because it's really sort of fascinating.
So Lindy Waters III was a good college player. He played at Oklahoma State, right? So he's originally a member of the Kiowa tribe, and I'm not sure. I don't know if he's exactly from the reservation, but he has tribal membership. And so he's one of the very few Native Americans to ever play in the league, which was one of the reasons why I noted him, because my mom's Native American. So anytime there's an association, I just want to learn more about these guys. So he played at Oklahoma State. And then after his last season is when I think the pandemic hit. So Lindy Waters was literally playing, before he got picked up by the G League in Oklahoma City, he was playing in like this midnight league. Like he was playing against you and I. Just to stay in shape, to get some run. He was door dashing in his meantime to make ends meet. And he did this for like an extended period of time. It wasn't just a month or two. Like he played in this midnight league and just worked on his game, hoping for a shot. Got a crack in a tryout with OKC's G League team. Classic story of, oh, well, I'm going to this tryout. I might as well just shoot the hell and, leave it all out there. Got a contract from the OKC G League team. Developed, worked his way up to his point where 3 seasons ago, I think he was like a 24-year-old rookie and still didn't get much burn on OKC. The only reason they dropped him is because they have so many guys on the roster that they needed spots for. And Steve Kerr, I think, had extended conversations with Mark Daigneault, who's the head coach with OKC. And he's been trying to sort of implement, you heard him last year talking, he was fawning over how OKC plays offense, getting shots up, taking threes, basically playing the modern game. And so Lindy Waters III was available and the Warriors picked him up. And immediately it was like, this guy's got a chance to play and he's pretty good. And he had a really good preseason, had that game winner in Hawaii against the Clippers, shot it really well. And so I'm just glad that someone like that, who literally went from door dashing 4 years ago to now being a rotational piece in the NBA, has a chance to flourish, because there's not many guys that get that opportunity.
He looks like a player, seriously. He just has got a way about him. And his temperament is so conducive to winning basketball. That guy is just keeps his head down. And he's a player. He is a absolute, look, it's early, right? But he just is, when he went off the other night, they were all good looks. And he defers. He doesn't take bad shots. I think Reggie Miller sort of highlighted him getting back, missed a 3 in the corner, and then hustled back to get the rebound on the other end as they had a leak out and like a 2-on-1 break the other way, did New Orleans. I'm big on that guy. And now that now that you filled me in on what it is that he's been through, how can you not pull for him? You get guys like that, the GP2 stories, guys who are just survivors in this league. I know at the end of the day, Giannis might make your team better, and the big free agents, the Butlers, and all of these big names, the Markkanens of the world, the Paul Georges. I don't know. Give me 5 of those dudes.
Well, if Lindy Waters III is starting for your team for an extended period of time, I do have my concerns. But
he shouldn't be starting.
No, but I'm rooting for him, because it also, I think he knows how to play. He can make the pass when he needs to. He's always been a good shooter. He's got the quote of the year so far by saying, "I keep a strap on me." Yeah. When someone asked him, how does he keep his shot so hot? And also, again, he's not a perfect player, but he's 6'6". He's long enough that he can keep a guy in front of him. He's tall enough that he can rebound. And he can help you for 10 to 15 minutes a game if you need, or apparently step in and be a starter and help you beat a depleted Pelicans team. It remains to be seen how many of these guys have staying power over an extended period. And that's why I do think that this road trip, I think we can really take a lot from. Like when you and I speak next week on Saturday, we will have a Houston game, a Boston game, and a Cleveland game to really dig into.
Yeah.
Assuming they take care of Washington. Yeah.
Text line is saying Lindy is like a Doug Christie with a 3-point shot. Doug Christie, a fine basketball player. I like the comparison. Doug Christie, shout out Pepperdine, but I hope not. Doug Christie was a whack job, and his wife was a whack job. So we do not want Lindy to be anything like Doug Christie off the court.
Doug Christie made 4 all-defensive teams.
He's a good player. I'm just telling you, he was a little cuckoo.
Well,
and his wife was just...
We need a little cuckoo.
Not in a good way. Again, The reason why I like Lindy is the guy is so even keel. Again, we're just getting to learn who he is, but there's something about guys like that. You know, you did a remarkable job, Atlanta. You were reading the book on the guy, right? Or were you reading something about the tribe?
There's a book that, understandably, the Killer Tribe's not very big, and there's not a lot of... I think there's only like 20 or 30 people in the world left that speak like the native language. So it's kind of a dwindling tribe. But the most famous tribal member outside of course, Lindy Waters III, was this, the author whose name escapes me. But anyways, he wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book back in the 60s.
What about Sonny Six Killer?
Excuse me?
Who's the most famous Indian athlete?
And Scott Momaday, the author of the book, by the way. Wait, what? The most famous
Native American.
Well, probably Otis Thorpe.
Oh, that's the guy.
Yeah, the
not Otis Thorpe. Is it Otis Thorpe? No. Jim Thorpe.
Jim Thorpe. Sorry.
Otis Thorpe. Center for the Sacramento Kings.
Jim Thorpe. Sorry. Thorpe. He was like a decathlon gold medalist. Also a Hall of Fame running back, Otis Thorpe. Yeah, Jim Thorpe. God, I was just talking about him yesterday. I can't believe I butchered that. All right, help us get us back on track. Austin from San Jose. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone. Austin, one of our favorites. What's going on, my man? How you doing here on Saturday?
Hey, happy Saturday, Dan and Evan. Listen, Waters, man, what a revelation. I like the story, and you were just going through Evan. That's really great to share that. But the guy is a shooter, man. I think he's probably I would rate Steph, Buddy Hield, and Waters as the 3 best shooters on the team. Just pure shooters. I don't know about his defense. I don't know about all that. But in terms of pure shooting, I think he's the third guy, and I do believe he's got to get more time. I don't care about pecking order and who's been around for 3 years and all that nonsense. Let's put the guy on the court that can score. And I think there's going to be games where you're going to need Waters. I think he's a decent defender too. He's long. Klay was 6'7". I think he's 6'6". So yeah, I like the measurable. So yeah, watch out for that. Listen, the other thing I want to chime in, I'm not going overboard with this start. I know it's 4-1, but I got to look at who they played. I do want to see adversity. Everybody's kumbayaing now, and I know that's great, and everybody's excited they get along. Honestly, I'm more cynical. I don't care as much about that stuff as most people. I just care about them winning, and I know teams that didn't get along or didn't care about each other, but they won. So I'll be interested to see how they do. And then my last thing, I know I'm going to turn some people off, and they're going to come at me, but Podziemski, man, I love the guy. He's a great, good player, but I think Kerr plays him a little bit too much for me. I think he tends to get over his skis on a lot of plays. I saw him the other night kind of trying to work the refs, and he's trying to turn into Draymond Green. I mean, listen, dude, just play basketball. I think he's a little overexposed right now for me, but hey, I like what I see, man. Let's see where we go. Let's figure out where we're at after 20 games, though. Let's not get crazy over 4-1. All right, guys, thanks. I'll keep listening.
Thanks, Austin. Well, I think...
You remember that play? I know exactly what Austin's talking about.
Yeah.
And Steve Kerr said that. He's like, no, I'm not reviewing that, bro. Just play. Shut up and play.
Podziemski complains from the bench. That's how I'd put that. Like, it's not just in games. Like, he's the first guy off the bench who's complaining about calls. But I will say that Podz is, especially the last 2 games, and maybe tonight, probably against Houston, he has to play the Curry minutes, because I don't really know who else is going to be on the ball as much as he is outside of Draymond. Off the bench, I think Anderson can handle the ball, but you need Podz to effectively be your point guard. So I think Austin's right. He's probably playing too much, but that's because Curry's out.
I used to think that, and Austin, we take his calls and I'd be right there with him. Like, why is this guy so privileged? Why does he jump to the front of the line? Moody's been looking for that sort of run since he got here.
But they play different positions.
They do, but in terms of getting an opportunity to play, Podziemski is just, I think he's jumped the line a little bit in front of other guys and getting an opportunity to play and play a lot. But then I watched him over the last 2 games. He's a hell of a player. Like, I think, Austin, if you're still listening, you can't deny the fact that this guy makes the little plays and his rebounding and just getting on the floor. He is such a good basketball player, and he is such like that of a Caruso. He's such a guy coveted by Steve Kerr. I think Steve Kerr looks at guys like that and said, give me 10 of those guys, and I'll get us another ring.
Well, I don't know if he'll say he can get you another ring.
Well, I'm being facetious.
But I think he'll tell you I can win a lot of basketball games with those players. Like
he's really, really, really good. And it's not his shooting, his scoring. It's all the other little intangibles that this guy provides.
And he might have got an opportunity earlier than most. And I think a lot of it was due to need. It was due to necessity. But, and people might not like this, but if you put a gun to Kerr's head and you said, you want 10 JKs, you want 10 Podziemskis.
Yeah.
I don't think he hesitates. He says, give me 10 pods.
Which is why he's probably more willing to trade a Jonathan Kuminga as opposed to a Podziemski.
Yeah, and Kuminga is probably infinitely more talented than Podziemski is. But when you watch him play, don't get me wrong, there's some plays, like Podz is frustrating from the standpoint of, I feel like he passes up the shots that you expect him to take, and then he takes the shots that you don't expect him. But all the other things that he does, he can play with anybody 1 through 15. I can't say the same about Kuminga, and I even don't know if I can say the same about Moody. I really like Moses Moody, but I don't know if Moody can play with everybody. Podz can play with anyone, and he's not a perfect player by any means, but there's not a ton of those guys, I think, in the league that you can just plug and play in any rotation. They can play any spot. Maybe they get blown by a couple times. They'll turn the ball over. They'll make young rookie mistakes. But Podz is, I think every team in the NBA would take a Brandon Podziemski.
He makes winning plays. You win with guys like that. He is, I think, he's a significant and a key part to what it is that the Golden State Warriors are trying to do. When does he get rid of that mask, by the way? Things got to go.
When does he get rid of that hair?
I like the hair.
Why?
Yeah, it's got a little personality to it.
Well,
a little flop going on there.
Well, he does do that. The mask is something that I think it's just, protocol. Like he needs it because he broke his nose.
Well, he hates it.
You could tell he don't like it.
I can't stand.
He's got to wear it though.
That thing.
That's probably why he's out there shooting till 1 a.m. because he's got to figure out how to make a jump shot with this mask on. He finally did make a few threes.
Whoever it is, the doctors or whomever it is that said Celebrini said you need to wear this thing, and it's a good call because if he didn't have that mask on for the last week, he would have rebroke that thing like 5 different times. He does not care. He's still running into dudes at 100 miles an hour.
Well, I wonder how much the mask actually helps. I'm sure it does. It provides some protection. But, yeah, Podz is going to battering ram his way into, who do they play tonight? Houston? Jabari Smith? Yeah, he's going to break that thing again.
Who had the hockey mask? Was that Jason?
What?
In Halloween?
Yeah, Jason. Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Well, you want to get a hockey mask for Podz?
No, I'm just thinking of mask and scary characters when it came to Halloween, and Jason used to scare the hell out of me. Do you remember the Blair Witch Project?
Yes.
God, that kept me up nights. And some people that was the stupidest thing in the world. That bothered me.
The scariest movie I think I ever saw. God.
Sorry.
No, this while we're quickly on the subject, we got a couple minutes left here. The Babadook. You ever seen The Babadook?
No.
Okay, it's an Australian horror film about this mother who found any horror movie with children in it. I'm out. I'm sorry. I can't do the kids who are, that get just
possessed.
Consumed by a demon, that get possessed. I can't do it. So this kid gets possessed by the Babadook, which is the name of a book. It's a children's book. You open it, infects your child. And so this woman, there's something also about international films, like foreign films that are horror films. Those are far more scary than any American film. You go watch the ones in Japan.
Japan
I
is
can't get through any
market
of them.
there.
Can't get through any
What's
of
the
them.
one where you'd watch the videotape?
That was The Ring.
The Ring, yeah.
But the American version is not as scary as the Japanese version, which is the original. And the Babadook, anyways, possesses this child, and just all of it was, it just gives me chills. I hate it. Anyways, I had to watch it in college for like some film study class. We were studying horror films. There's an art to it.
Film study class, which I thought somebody convinced me this is going to be a 4-unit A, was the most difficult class I ever had to take. I had to study
Podziemski?
No, Podziemkin. I think that's the Russian director's names. The Podziemkin steps. I'm like, oh God, what am I looking at here?
They didn't put you on Stanley Kubrick or something?
You know what I had to the movie that I had to break down literally for an entire semester was Citizen Kane.
Ugh.
And it just like every facet of that movie. What's the last line at the end of Citizen Kane?
I don't know. It's overrated.
What's the last line? Somebody tell me. It's
my mom would shoot me for saying that, but
Rosebud.
Could have fooled me.
Rosebud. And the meaning with Rosebud is that it's the name of his sled. It's the last thing he says, Rosebud. It was his sled, which took him back to a much happier time, and the only time in his life they had this level of happiness and pure joy through this turbulent life. So for those of you that are going to rent Citizen Kane.
Well, you just spoiled the end. And the movie that I think I'd rather spend more time dissecting, because we had to do it for 2 weeks, Rambo: First Blood.
Come on.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Speaking of hair.
It is one of the more, I would say,
no, bro.
interesting Stallone films. No, I'm telling you. First of all, it's one of the few movies, one of the first movies that really digs into, at least that was popularized, that really digs into
Vietnam War?
No, PTSD, bro. They actually, no. The first one, and maybe it's not First Blood. The very first Rambo, when he comes back from war, and he's like this kind of nomadic hitchhiker, and he's in this small Colorado town, and then they end up having to send the National Guard to try and take him out. But he's suffering from PTSD. The final scene where he finally breaks down and just emotionally is wrecked and just tells and spills his guts about all these different terrible things he's done across overseas, that is acting.
It's Stallone at the end of the day.
Yeah, but that's why he had to write. He wrote the whole thing. By the way, people, do not get me on my soapbox for Stallone. I love that guy. On the other side, we'll get back into another emotional wreck.
After Rocky 1, he didn't do anything.
What are you talking about? First of all, do not besmirch Rocky 1.
No, after Rocky 1, he didn't do anything.
He did several things, including Rambo.
I'm not giving you Rambo.
Yes, he did. And we'll get into another emotional wreck, Draymond Green on the other side. No, that was a cheap shot.
I want to talk about Houston.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's very interesting to compare the two situations between Houston.
I'm talking about
and
Angelica Houston, the actor.
Let's just go to break. Warriors this week will be back after this on 95.7 The Game.
Get in zone, auto. Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
All right, 1 hour left here, 9 to noon every single Saturday. Warriors This Week, Evan Giddings, Dan DeVoe. This from the Comcast Business Text line from the 510. And this is the conversation I think we're trying to get into as the Warriors prepare to take on the Houston Rockets at 5 o'clock tonight. Warriors live an hour before 4 o'clock. Tim Roy on the call, and then post-game right here on 95.7 The Game. Do you guys think that Brendan Podziemski will ever be an all-star? If I had to bet, no, I wouldn't. But that doesn't mean that he can't help the Warriors win. In fact, if I'm looking at the Warriors right now in their roster, they have one all-star. It's Steph Curry. Even if the Warriors get off to such as an 18-2 start like they did the year they won the championship, let's say at the all-star break, if it's, 50 games into the season, the Warriors could be 35-15. I think they still only have one all-star. And that's what I think we're learning about this group is the team a greater than the sum of its parts? Like, is it greater than the individuals? Because I don't think they're more talented than, say, the Houston Rockets, who they play tonight at 5. The Houston Rockets have a ton of young talent, but I think the Warriors are going to win this game tonight because they're a better team, even though they don't have Kerr.
Well, we're going to find out a lot more about this quote-unquote team starting tonight. And I think Houston's a really good and interesting matchup because I think Houston, if things go according to plan and we're buying in that the Warriors are going to be a good team this year, I think Houston's going to be one of those teams, along with Sacramento, maybe Memphis, that the Warriors, the Lakers, the Warriors are going to be yo-yoing and jostling for position, maybe teams 5 through 11, depending on the night and the matchup that they're going to be going back and forth. And I think one of those teams could be, not only could be, but maybe their arch rival in sort of, positioning, whether it's for the 5 or the 6 or the 7 seed, is going to be the Houston Rockets. And Houston's a very, very good team. And much like that of a lot of teams in the West, they're young and they're getting more mature, which is a scary combination. What's interesting is that when I look at the landscape of the West, and we talk about how talented they are, but there's going to be some teams that I think, and namely, keep an eye on Denver. Denver could be one of those teams that falls back to the pack. And I think you could see someone like Houston potentially replacing a Denver and ascending into that top 3 or 4 or 5 if they have a breakout year. But I think Houston and the Warriors are going to be two teams that are going to be jockeying for positioning when it comes to the NBA playoffs throughout the entire season.
Yeah, and the Houston Rockets, like I asked you the question earlier, who do you think win more games, the Lakers or the Warriors? And I think they're easier to compare because, they have aging stars.
You're talking about the Lakers.
Yeah, they've been in similar positions. But as far as like the Vegas win totals, the Warriors and the Rockets, I think, were pretty close. I think the Rockets over-under was 43.5 or 43, and the Warriors was 44 or 44.5. So they're very close. I do think tonight's not going to tell us who's going to win more games over 82, but I think it'll give us a glimpse into which style works. Yeah, Curry's out, but like I still feel confident that the Warriors can win this game tonight, even though the Rockets on paper are probably much better. They're whole. I
wish I could tell you that I agree with you or I disagree with you, but quite frankly, I have no idea what the hell to expect. And that's sort of the beauty of this team, is that they're fun again and they're enjoyable. I really don't know what's going to happen or what's going to unfold or who's going to be an unlikely star. And that's sort of been their MO up to this point. It could be another breakout game for, I don't know, Buddy Hield.
Well, they're going to need Buddy to score tonight. Without Curry, you need someone to fill it up.
Yeah, Buddy Hield's got to score. Is Lindy Evans going to break out again?
Waters?
Or Lindy Waters, excuse me. It's Lindy Evans.
I don't know. I know Tyreek Evans, Reggie Evans, Evan Mobley. But the thing about the Warriors is that, like last season, and this is why I do, I know we had Austin calling earlier, and, still hesitant, wants to see more. I get that. But let's say the Warriors win tonight. They're 5-1. Last year, they were also 5-1. It's a different 5-1. And I know that sounds maybe homerish, but last year, Steph Curry had to be the guy for every single game. He was the leading scorer the first 11 games of last season, win or loss. This year, Buddy Hield has been the leading scorer for 4 of 5. Could that change tonight? Yes. Andrew Wiggins is probably back because he's been the other leading scorer. That was in the Warriors' lone loss. But Wiggins can lead on a given night. I think Kuminga has the ability to lead on a given night if he's given the runway. Buddy Hield has already shown that he can score 20-plus points per game if they need him to. The Warriors have a lot of different ways to make up what has been an offensive void whenever Curry misses games. And I think also to your point earlier about their defense, they're not just a team that's going to let you score 110, 120 easy. Last year, if they were playing the Rockets right now, I would feel pretty good that the Rockets would win that game without Steph because the Rockets will get up and down, they will run, and they would just pulverize the Warriors. But this year, there's something about their versatility that lends me to believe that even if they're having an off shooting night, that they'll do enough defensively to stay in the game. And they even proved against the Pelicans on the night that the Pelicans actually were healthy when they had McCollum as well as Herb Jones, that a 20-point lead is not insurmountable.
The Warriors are so unlike any other Warrior team over the last, I don't know, maybe since Steve Kerr has been here. This is so different.
Were you thinking of Linda Evans? That's from the text line.
No, who's that? Oh, Linda, wasn't she a star from Dynasty, Linda Evans?
Yeah. Sorry.
This is just such an unusual basketball team for the Warriors because it's not star-centric right now. It will be because I think Steph will be Steph at the end of the day. But right now, it's so fun, man. And I really do think, and I'm not jumping on Klay, but I think his removal has a lot to do with what it is that we're seeing right now. Because what jumps out at me when I watch the Warriors, it's not, Buddy Hield's making threes and Lindy Waters has been a remarkable story. Podziemski's on the floor again. But it's just the energy. It's palpable, man. It just is like, whoa, what's going on here? They suffocate defensively, and now they're young, and they can get up and down the floor. And then they just keep coming at you with the wave of guys, so you never have to worry about load management. You never have to worry about minutes. It's just a different guy that's going to suffocate you. And if he's not doing his job, if he's not up to snuff for a certain game, then somebody else, it's interchangeable. And again, I just think up to this point, while we talk about sustainability, is this team going to be able to do this? Are they going to be relevant and get back to me in a month or 2 months or 3 months? As of right now, they're fun as hell. And I'm all in, man. I cannot wait to see what's going to unfold tonight because fun has finally returned back to the Golden State Warriors. And I think a lot of it has to do with grumpy Klay getting out of town. And not only his attitude, but I just think physically, you couldn't play like this. Klay is just so Klay-centric. Like if I hit my first three, feed me, because, I scored 37 in a quarter once. And one of the reasons why I'm out on Dallas this year is that, maybe you can hide Kyrie and Luka defensively for a while as they did last year, and they got much better defensively. But the three of them, Klay, Kyrie, and Luka, I saw Luka in a possession. I saw two things, actually, as I was strolling through watching NBA games that jumped out at me. Before I lose my train of thought, I'm going to give them both to you. One of which is like Luka just gets beat literally with his finger up his nose on a defensive possession. Somebody just went backdoor on him, and he's just like, huh, what? And then Klay just simply can't physically, he can't move laterally like he once did. And then Kyrie's Kyrie. He wants the ball in his hands, and he's not a very good defender and never has been. And that's going to catch up when your best three players can't give you anything on the defensive end. The other thing in watching and just perusing around the NBA channels, I watched San Antonio for about half a quarter. And I think there's got to be an edict
out of San Antonio.
Game? The OKC game.
Yeah.
And I would say that if I'm Popovich, I'm sitting down my young team, and I'm telling them, look, my man, Wembenyama, has to have at least one touch on every possession. I tuned into this game. I saw 5 consecutive possessions where there was Zach Collins or Keldon Johnson that are jacking up like a 30-footer with 2 guys on him. I think, I don't want to see this. Give him the ball. At least let him touch the ball. If you've got Victor Wembanyama and you're the San Antonio Spurs, the way they're currently constructed, he should touch the ball at least once on every possession.
That I agree with. But it's funny watching the Spurs now. All right. Last night, went out with a couple buddies, had a pop, went back to the apartment, and, among some other medicinal activities, we were watching, we queued up a few YouTube videos, and I noticed that one of the videos or string of videos that they were watching was...
Is that what your generation does now?
What?
You come home and you watch YouTube?
Well, I had to wake up early for the show, Dan. I wasn't trying to go out until 2 a.m.
I'm just saying.
I've been known to do. But the videos that they were watching were of the 2014 Spurs. They had several videos in a row. The beautiful game, the San Antonio Spurs. And you watch these videos and, you're a little in
that finals against Miami was that was beautiful. They just dissected that team.
And as I'm sitting there enlightened, I'm being enlightened to how they were so damn good. Everyone touched the ball on every possession. Boris Diaw was in every single one of these highlights. Thiago Splitter, not a great individual player.
Terrible.
But he knew how to pass the ball. These Golden State Warriors play more like those Spurs teams than this Spurs team plays like that Spurs team. These Golden State Warriors this year already, that's the thing that I do believe gives me some confidence that their sustainability is that everyone touches the ball. And even when Buddy Hield is jacking up shots and on Tuesday night, he was 1 for 9, he's going to have the same confidence coming out of the second half to just gun and run. But everyone still touches the ball on these possessions. Now, not literally, but you know what I'm saying. No one feels like they're on an island when they're playing for this particular team. Even Wiggins, in the few games that he's played so far, looks like he's more engaged as far as moving the ball. Now, he still doesn't rebound as much as I'd like, and the assist numbers are not going to be Chris Paul, but even some of the players that you typically think about just siloing in on and looking at Kuminga, Wiggins, as just being kind of, holes with the ball, right? You get the ball to them, that ball goes up, and no one else touches it on that possession. That's not the same case anymore. And so I was just thinking about that watching the 2014 Spurs. These guys moved the ball so damn well. They have 3 Hall of Famers and a Hall of Fame coach and all the rest, but no one ever felt like they were out of the play because they might touch it at any time. Yeah. And that's what this Warriors team feels like.
No, it's fun, man. This is enjoyable to watch again. And maybe it's just me, and you know this and doing enough shows, and especially during the off season, I'm just out on things being centered around these stars. I love this version of the Warriors, and who knows how far they'll go. But I'd rather watch this than Lauri Markkanen strapped to this team for the next 10 years in some crazy contract and half of these kids out the door. And the same holds true with Paul George, Jimmy Butler, all those names that were bandied about. This version of the Golden State Warriors is enjoyable when everybody's... And it's very reminiscent, again, of what Steve Kerr is, and it's sort of a reflection of his sojourn as a player, is that you've got to earn your minutes. That's how I played. Steve Kerr's that's how I got into games in San Antonio and Chicago, is that I had to prove myself. And that's exactly what this team is all about. Aside from maybe 2 guys, if you're going to get run, then you've got to play well. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I was going to say, not everybody has to earn their minutes. But I do think that with everyone else playing as much as they have, it appropriately suppresses the 2 guys that the minutes are pretty much just allocated to them, and that's Curry and Draymond. Curry's 36, or going to be 36. Draymond is either 33 or 34.
It's 35.
They're in the back end of their careers, point being. Those guys don't need to be playing, especially this young into the season, 30 to 35 minutes a game if they don't have to. Curry's out. He's not going to play tonight in Houston. If the Warriors don't need Draymond to play 30 plus, I think they can still win basketball games. You know, Draymond, I don't even know if he's cracked the 30-minute mark. He may have in the second game against New Orleans when he put the clamps on Zion Williamson, who, by the way, I do have an affinity for players that you know exactly what they're going to do, and still they have a way to get it done. Like, everyone knows Zion's going left.
Yeah.
And he can still get to his left hand with the best of them. Like on Tuesday, that first game they played, he scored 31 points. Half of it was just putting his shoulder down and getting to the cup. Draymond was really good against him the night after, but God, Zion just infatuates me. I love him.
You like Zion?
I do like Zion. Yeah. I also think he's a smarter player than he gets credit for. Maybe I'm just thinking about what he did at Duke, but he's a really good passer. He is, I think, a capable defender when he's engaged. He's certainly big enough to be, and he's heady. I just don't think he plays with a team that really maximizes him, to be honest.
I think Willie Green and the Pelicans are a good team. I think that much like last year, they're going to get either towards the middle part of the season or the latter part of the season and then just throw it into another gear, where all of a sudden it's like Zion and Brandon Ingram. And then when Trey Murphy is a hell of a player when he comes back. And DeJounte Murray, I haven't seen enough of him, I guess, with that team to know whether he really fits. I know he's a big scorer in Atlanta, but you got to be more than that if you're really going to win. So, actually, Brandon Ingram, I was reading something interesting about him, that Brandon Ingram is just a guy that can shoot over you. And a lot of people thought that, Brandon Ingram was going to be this guy who can pass, he can get to the rim, he's got this great mid-range, and he can shoot open threes, and if he has a smaller man, he'll shoot over you. But there's not a lot more to his game than that.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's not somebody, because he was rumored as a potential trade piece to the Warriors.
Well,
I'm not a big Brandon Ingram guy. And plus, he checked out on that team at the end of last year.
He did. And I don't know, I kind of feel like he wonders what his future role is going to be with that team. And which is why he might also be playing a little more, not selfishly, but I think Brandon Ingram's game is good for Brandon Ingram. I have yet to see if it's good for the rest of the team. He's a talented player.
We have the MPF, most punchable face. We've got to have an MSF, the most stoned face, because he'd be right at the top of that list.
Klay's up there.
Klay
is up there. Someone like Buddy Hield doesn't look high, but he kind of plays high, if you know what I mean.
I don't know what you mean.
I mean, that ball will go up as quick as it's in his hand. And it doesn't really matter from where, especially if he sees one go down.
So why isn't that guy? Listen, I follow Buddy Hield about as much as, well, maybe you followed him more than me. I knew about his career. I know that he couldn't get off the bench in Philadelphia last year. Is this just one of those where it's just sort of a Sam Darnold? You just had to be unlocked? Is he now in a system where you recognize, what it is that you can do, and it's just a matter of you being in the right sort of environment and us providing you all the pieces?
I mean, I don't think he's going to shoot 50% from three for the whole year.
But he's a better than 40% career shooter from three.
He is. No, he's a marksman, especially if he's closer to 42 or 43. Like he's going to have some more big games for the Warriors. But Buddy, the thing that I've honestly been the most impressed with, which brings us back to one of my larger takeaways from the 4-1 start, it's how well he's played defensively. I was sold this bill of goods that he was a traffic cone, that he couldn't guard a chicken. He couldn't guard anybody. And that's not necessarily been the case. Now, he's not going to be on any all-defensive teams, but he tries hard. He'll fight through screens. And I think he also does a pretty good job of running guys off the three-point line, which he can control, which is just effort. And then the Warriors' front line between TJD and Draymond are right there to sort of step in and close the space and not allow easy baskets. So I don't know if it's the fit as much as he's kind of bought in. But yeah, Buddy Hield seems like he's in La La Land. Like he loves this place.
I mean, if he continues to shoot, not at a 50% clip.
He's scoring like 22 a night. I think that's going to come down too.
That I don't know. I mean, we're looking for that guy who can give you 20 a night, and we overlooked Buddy Hield. And him and Steph, This is interesting.
The Splash Buddies?
I don't know what the hell's going to happen with all of these pieces, but this is captivating. And I got up today and I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy who's going to get on the air saying this isn't sustainable, throw water on this thing, saying, let's see, get back to me when they're in a close game, get back to me after, a tough road trip. No, I'm enjoying life as it's played out right now. I'm in the moment. And in the moment right now, the Warriors are 4-1 and beating the crap out of everybody.
Well, it's hard not to enjoy it. Again, and it's not just about the wins. It's about how they've won. And the other thing that, speaking of Buddy Hield, I think he got a bad rap because, again, I was kind of making a joke that he plays like he's high. But I think people that are chuckers or gunners typically get branded as selfish players. Buddy Hield toes the line, but he doesn't strike me as a selfish dude.
No, he's never been I don't think he's ever been labeled a selfish player. It's just that when he goes cold, he can go cold. And again, maybe it's a system thing, and I don't know that he's ever played with a shooter like that of a Steph Curry.
But when you don't have your shot going and you're continuing to chuck, I think people will look at you and say, "What are you doing? You're playing selfishly because you're looking for your shot and it's not there."
And they'll tell you shooters shoot. Like, I'm here to do one thing in the NBA. There's only one reason why I'm on this team. And so I'll shoot until I miss, and when I miss, you sit me down.
He took, who was the backup center for New Orleans? But he's got more of a bag than I thought. Like, he took one, was it Misi? He took their backup center off the dribble to the cup. Like, he can he can score.
Yeah, he can get to the rim.
He's not just a shooter.
With left hand, yeah. And he's got handled, too.
More than I thought.
Yeah.
And God love him more than Klay.
You need to handle these days if you got to create your own three. I mean, if you got to in order to get that step back. Speaking of the three, there's a lot of discussion these days about moving that thing back, and I'm talking about the line and eliminating the corner three.
I think the corner three is maybe more of a problem. On the other side, I'll tell you why. I don't think moving the 3-point line back would actually. I don't think it would help that much. I'll tell you why on the other side. But real quick, the guy who I want to have a handle, who thinks he has a handle, but does not have a handle, is Kuminga. Like, his bag is not as deep as even Buddy Hield's. That's something I for some reason I thought he had more haha.
Well, I think his handle's all right.
He just he's the guy at pickup who like dribbles between the legs and goes around the back, and you realize he doesn't go anywhere.
Well, he's not. See, handle usually
he's explosive to.
I think because
get to the rim
for a guy that is. Usually you think of handle for smaller guys because they got to cross you up so they can get that first step so they can get to the rim. Kuminga can just do it with pure athleticism. Like, he can overpower you, and he has the speed and the quickness. You don't have to be as crafty when you're 6'7" as opposed to 6'4".
No, but I feel like we assume he can just get to the rim at will, but at least so far this season, I haven't really seen that.
Oh, he had that hell of a move. I don't know who it is. He came down on a break from the right side. I mean,
so it was in transition.
Like it was in transition.
Maybe I'm talking more about in the half court, but I don't know.
I think we got to get to a break.
All right, man. One more segment on the other side of Warriors this week.
Like Draymond here working with B. Diddy. You all right over there?
Oh, come on. Well, I mean, last night maybe. 888-957-9570 is the number if you want to get on the last segment on the other side. Warriors this week is back after this.
Hey, Diamond lovers. Shane Company knows fine.
Here on a Saturday, Evan and Dan with you. Got through a litany of subjects. Of course, we dive into our extracurricular interests and
Do you want Cam and I to hold down the end of the show?
Shut up. I had somewhere to be. No. All right. So last week I had to dip out a little bit early. Actually, I barely made it. So I had a
I was wondering about.
I had a volleyball broadcast at Santa Clara. There was a fat accident on the 101.
You don't use Waze?
Well, I do, but it was still faster to take that than to go down to 280 and go all the way around. So it usually on Saturdays it's like a straight shot, it's just 45 down, but it took me an hour and 20 to get there. And so usually I was planning on having like an extra 40 minutes to prep. Literally got there 10 on the clock, hopped on the headset. Producer's like, all right, run down. We got to go through it. Blah, 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 blah. And ended up having a decent broadcast. It was a straight set sweep.
It was great, Cam. The first thing Cam said to me when you were going to
I was listening, by the way.
The headset, he goes, Dan, come to me. I got a hot take. I got a hot take. He was all over it, man. Cam did not miss a beat.
Cam, do you have, so you've been doing all these games. Cam's also our network coordinator for 95.7 The Game. He runs every single Warriors show, pre and post, hardest working man at the station. Cam, if I was to ask you your takeaways from the first 5 games of the Warriors, is there a big one? Is it a couple things? How would you answer that?
I'd say the biggest takeaway for me is just them having the ball movement and them having a deep roster right now. So having 12 men playing like that, it's giving guys a chance to rest, and it's giving other players to step up and step out and show that they can do something, because this can provide some longevity with the team, because it's an 82 game season. They're going to need all these players, and then just new guys stepping up, and then all the young guys stepping up. They're being forced to play. And then when you look at guys like Moody, he even said he took time in the offseason to continuously learn and just get better. And now he's able to demonstrate those things and all these skills. So they're going to need these guys to mature fast and step up when Curry's out. So when you look at games like this with Curry and Wiggins being out, they're able to, it's like they haven't really missed a beat.
That I agree with. Yeah. I mean, everyone's had to step up. And I do think the roster's made itself to be a little more injury-proof.
Anytime you want to cut out, man, Cam, turn that mic on and go, brother. Watch out, man. Do you know?
About to get Wally pipped.
Yeah, you just beat me to the spot. Thank you. You are an old soul, brother. Wally Pip.
Yeah, I get older every time I work with you.
The guy that Lou Gehrig replaced.
By the way,
what?
No, it just
focus, Warriors.
No, I know,
focus.
Warriors. There's a lot of Yankees that are going to be replaced this offseason. Let me just say that.
Does Cashman keep his job?
He should.
And what about Boone? No,
that is a bigger one. I think they still keep him, but God, he had a bad World Series.
He did.
He had a terrible World Series. Oh boy, so did the Yankees. Well, at least they made the postseason. Giants are still trying to get there. Warriors are trying to make the postseason. It was a terrible transition. What do you think they go on this road trip, Dan? 5 games. All right, tonight, 5 o'clock, Houston. We'll have Warriors Live and Warriors Wrap Up beginning at 4 o'clock. Tim Roy on the call, as always. Monday, they get Washington. Wednesday, Boston. Friday, Cleveland. And we'll talk before the OKC game on Sunday, but this week they got 4 games.
3-2.
For the whole trip, 3-2?
Yeah.
Who's the third team they're beating?
Well, they're going to shock either Oklahoma or Boston.
Oh, Cleveland's the team they're not beating.
Oh, Cleveland. Sorry.
All right, Houston.
So you're going to beat Houston, you're going to beat Washington, you're going to beat Cleveland.
They're going to lose to Boston and OKC.
Lose is going to be putting it mildly.
They're going to get... Well, what was the game in Boston last year? They got beat by 50.
Yeah.
And Draymond Green said, yeah, well, we dared Jaylen Brown to shoot. Right. And didn't go our way. They're down 25 at the end of the first.
Yeah. But the thing is, Ev, we're going to learn a lot more about this team. They're just not as good as Boston, but nobody is right now. And OKC is in another league. So if you lose to those 2 teams, it really means nothing. But if the Houston game is really going to be interesting. And even playing Boston as well as playing OKC, don't you want to see it? Don't you want to just see what this looks like? I mean, I'm so curious.
Well, I want to see it with Curry.
Yeah, you want to see it with Curry, but I just want to see how this remove Portland and even get the Pelicans the hell out of the way. Let's just see what this looks like against legitimate teams. And just is this real? Are we like, is this a bag of goods that we're buying? Or is this something like, is there some legitimacy to any of this? So if it's close with either one of those teams, Boston or OKC, I think it's going to be awfully interesting with this team going forward.
Well, you got to beat Houston first. To me, that's not going to be an easy game. The only guys that are out for tonight officially, for the Warriors, it's Curry and Melton, and then the Rockets, Steven Adams got hurt on Thursday. But this is a Houston team that's pretty much at full strength. And a lot of people are high on. I wasn't as high on Houston to begin the season or before the year. Like we're talking about those totals. If both teams are at about 44 wins, I would take the Warriors over. I would take the Rockets under. But they got some dudes, and they got some emerging players. Jalen Green's averaging like 30 points a game so far.
Jabari Smith Jr.
Jabari Smith, Şengün.
Oh, I love Alperen.
Oddly enough, they started to play and win when he got hurt. But I don't know if that was just a coincidence or not. Him and Jalen Green still to be proved whether they can play together. And then they got Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks.
Yeah.
Who are at least veterans. VanVleet's good. So, this is a Rockets team. They got one of the Thompson twins, one of the San Leandro boys. They got some players. So I think this is a good test tonight. If the Warriors win this game, that would make me feel much better about their chances to go 3-2. And not just because they get the win, but because I wonder if they can play at the Rockets level right now without Steph.
Washington's a little better this year, so.
Yeah. Well, they're better than 11 wins, you'd hope.
I think that the Warriors, you're right. I think the Houston game is going to be a good measuring stick because, again, I think Houston's going to be one of those teams that they're going to be battling with throughout the entire season when you're talking about playoff positioning. It's going to be Houston's, and they're going to go back and forth. And it's going to be that 5 to 9 seed or 10 seed is just going to change, I think, in the latter part of the year from day to day. And Houston's going to be, this is a team that you're going to have to leapfrog. So, again, we're talking about test and who are these guys? Does this work with 13 cats getting in the rotation? Well, today is going to be school is in. Let's find out.
Well, and I am still tempering expectations. This is from the 415 of the Comcast Business Text line. No, one of our favorites. The weekend show is awesome. Hidden gem. Appreciate the love. Love the Warriors' chances of going 4-1 or even 5-0 over this road trip. Look at Cleveland as the toughest contest. Excited to see the Warriors get a decisive win in Houston this evening with Kuminga, especially having a good game. No, I didn't say Asar Thompson and San Leandro boys. Thank you, 916. So,
no substitute for the Evan.
Well, you're taking a shot at me earlier. But but again, I think people are again getting a little ahead of themselves in regards to the expectations for this team. I think we can learn a lot about this trip, but I still feel like they're about, as far as wins are concerned, in that 46 to 47 range that they were last year. I haven't moved off of my season-long expectation for this team, but I think they certainly have proven that they have earned our attention. If they had lost, I don't know, one or maybe both of those Pelicans games, I wouldn't feel that good about this road trip.
Which is tough to do.
What?
Back-to-back against the same team?
Winning both?
Yeah, that second game is really, really difficult. I would say the percentages of winning 2 in a row back-to-back against the same team on that second night is in the 30 percentile.
I think they benefited from McCollum and Herb Jones being out for the second game.
Warriors don't want to hear that when you don't have DeAnthony Melton, Curry, and Wiggins. You got to cry somewhere else with that noise.
No, but I mean, it wasn't like you beat him. Like the first game to me was far more impressive. Number one, because the Pelicans, I thought that both teams were at an even level of strength. And secondly, you came back from down 20. That game last year, the Warriors get blown out, I think. Like they roll over after they're down 17 at the end of the first quarter.
I would say that maybe you're right, but I think that the second game last year, they definitely lose. Even though it wasn't pretty, That was sort of a slugfest because it's back-to-back. That's the game typically where you're like, it's ugly, it's the same team, they're going to solve you. And typically, the team that wins the night before loses that next game. But the fact that they won it, to me, that was more notable. Like, huh? How the hell did you do that?
Well, I think once you get the first one, you're allowed to get greedy. And the Warriors have enough players to stay fresh and try and chase those wins, where I don't think they were afforded that in years past because they lack the depth. 925, this is from Dublin March. Shout out to you. Not afraid of the Celtics. The win will come down to which team hits the most threes. That does bring us back to our conversation about the three-point, I don't even want to say revolution in the NBA, but just
they got to get rid of the back-to-back.
Embracement. Get rid of the back-to-back?
The same team, the baseball series.
Well, last year they did it because it was a part of the in-season tournament. And that made sense to me, but this was just, I don't know if it's because New Orleans has the strangest schedule because technically they're, the furthest team west outside of Memphis, I think. But they played not only back-to-back against the Warriors, they played back-to-back games with a day apart in Portland. So four of their first 5 games have been against 2 teams. It's kind of weird.
Well, nobody wants to see that. It's terrible for the entertainment dollar. I don't want to see New Orleans the next night.
I'd like to see Zion twice.
Oh, once is fine.
What if I told you your precious Cleveland Cavaliers play your back-to-back games? You don't want to see Donovan Mitchell 2 nights in a row?
That's the whole beauty of the NBA.
I'm going to see Springsteen. I want to see what he's doing one night and then how he adjusts the next night. Does he have the same gas?
You want to see, that's the beauty of the NBA is that you revolve these different stars coming in and out for a homestand.
I think they should just play baseball series.
Oh, no.
It's 4 in a row. See who's really best before we get to the postseason.
I disrupted your chain of thought. Threes in the Celtics.
Oh, well, I do hate the way that the Celtics play basketball, just in general. They shoot so many damn threes.
50 a game.
It's just, but it's not even like the 2018 Rockets, because at least the Rockets and those Harden-led teams, they weren't fun watches, but at least they were doing it because that's how they had to play. Like that's who James Harden is. I feel like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Drew Holiday, all these players have so many different facets to their game, and we saw some of it during the postseason when you have to win different ways, but they just drive, kick, shoot, step back, shoot threes. And then they're good enough defensively to make sure that if they hit 15 to 20 threes, you're just not going to beat them. So they've figured out, they've gamed the NBA.
Well, they've become the model franchise. It's not by coincidence that Steve Kerr says we got to shoot a lot more threes after what it is that Boston did last year, shooting more threes than anybody. I think...
Well, they shot astronomically more than anybody else. Like the Warriors were top 5 in terms of attempts last year.
It gets back to our earlier conversation about moving that line back. Because the game is just becoming so homogenous. Everybody looks like everybody else. It's all about three-point shooting, and it's watering down the game to a certain degree. Because it's all about shooting threes. Whether you make them or not is basically, that's who you are as a team.
I don't know if the line being moved back would help all that much, because one of the things that I feel like college has over the NBA, there's a lack of spacing. So it's easier to defend, yes, but you don't see as many volume three-point shooters in college because it's easier to get out and close out. If you move the line backwards, I mean, it depends on how far you move it, but I almost feel like it spreads the game out even more. Eliminating the quarter three might be something, or just widening the court in general. That might be something, but I don't think that would encourage teams to play more through the post. I think it would just encourage teams to get shooters that could shoot it from deeper. And maybe you have more of a mid-range game. But the whole idea is that you want to shoot threes at a high enough percentage that it's either going to be 60% from twos or 40% from threes. And then you're getting the same amount of expected points per possession. It's just math. Like that's where nerds, I think, are coming into basketball. Not ruining the game necessarily, but it's a monotonous style. Like everyone's playing the same way. It's not just Boston. Like
it's everybody.
OKC plays the same way. The Warriors are shooting the crap out of the ball. In fact, That was the thing against the Pelicans that made me feel like, well, the Warriors are going to win this game anyways. You see how many threes that the Pelicans shot in the first game? Like, they shot 50% from the floor, 40% from three, and I think 75 from the line. They got blown out because they took 19 threes. You can't win in 2024-25 without taking at least 30 threes a game. Unless you're, I don't know, a great defensive team.
They got to do something because I do think
the shooters are just too good.
Oh, the players are just so good in this league right now. The talent has never been this good. I was listening to Charles Barkley, was hilarious, as he often is, the other day. And he was talking about just how good the game is right now. Not only in terms of the talent, but the money these guys are getting paid and everything that's available to them in terms of health and load management. He's like, if I was able to play, he said, I would be, that's it. He was talking about Zion Williamson. And Barkley said the most money he ever made was $5 million a year. He said, if I was making $40 to $45 million a year, I'd be an anorexic, which is not something that, you want to make light of.
Sure.
But he's a guy, I think the point was well taken, is that it's a completely different game now. So,
by the way, did you see Joel Embiid's comments yesterday?
Who hasn't played yet this year?
So he was asked.
Nor is Paul George.
He was asked. Well, Paul George actually got hurt, although he tends to do that a lot. Joel Embiid was asked about his critics who say that he doesn't play or he doesn't want to play. And he said, quote, I've done way much for this bleeping city to be treated like this. Your response?
What has he done? He's never even been to the He hasn't been to the Eastern Conference Finals.
I think that's what the Philly fans would say. Although it hasn't always been his fault.
Who he is?
Who is
He's
he?
the Lamar Jackson of the NBA.
No.
Well, look, your man Lamar Jackson's got to do something in the
Get off my guy Lamar.
Do something in the playoffs, Lamar. There's regular season Lamar.
He was just in the AFC title game.
Did they go to the title game this year?
Yeah, they lost to the Chiefs at home. Or Zay Flowers fumble in the end zone away from maybe knocking off KC.
You got to win that thing.
Well, they had to win it, so the Niners had a better chance because the Chiefs are the freaking kryptonite. He's not, well, he might be Lamar Jackson. They are, does he have 2 MVPs, Joel Embiid? Not sure. He's got at least one. But
I don't know.
I just thought it was, like, I've never heard an athlete just spur their city. I know it's Philly. They're hard, but damn, man. I've done too much for this bleeping city. Basically, mother bleep all you guys, all you bleepers.
He's really.
You want to go all in on Joel Embiid?
Go get him?
Yeah.
To the Warriors.
All in.
Oh, yeah. Why not? Sure.
Giannis?
Sense.
Embiid?
Yeah. Sure. Why not?
God, you're more closer to a rebuild than trying to go trade for a big boy.
Rebuild? You mean?
You love razing things to the ground.
No, I think that this version of the Golden State Warriors, which, by the way, didn't we do like a preview show? You guys dragged me in here. It was me, you, Grandy. We were the first day of free agency. And we were, man, you have got to put down the pipe, bro.
What are you talking about?
We did a preview show.
Yeah, we did.
And we did it was the first day of free agency.
A 3-man wave. I'm remembering. Just because my eyes are hazy doesn't mean I'm sharp upstairs,
You're looking
Dan.
at me like you've never met me. But it was... I think I was just, I maintain that this is the road to go, man. This is what you want to do. Would you want Klay Thompson, that $40 million, just, would you want that on your books right now, or that $40 million dispersed amongst 7 guys right now?
No. Well, and in all seriousness, I know that there's salary caps in the NBA, so it's a little bit different. But I think what the Golden State Warriors are doing is they're playing Moneyball. Like, they're turned Klay Thompson and his $40 million into 3 serviceable pieces that all individually might not be, speaking about Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton, might not all be individually as talented as Klay Thompson. Even at his older age, I think he's a better player. But those 3 put together are infinitely more impactful than Klay Thompson would be right now. I do believe that. And so the Golden State Warriors just turned his contract into 3 cheaper options that either they could move in a trade that they could use to help them right now, or that gives them more flexibility and also makes them a better basketball team. Like I think they are playing Moneyball right now.
I'm revising my road trip and the prediction I gave
5-0?
4-1.
Oh. I talked you into it?
I think this is...
I'll say 3-2.
I think there's something special going on here. I really do.
So you think we're gonna end up with the 18-2 start?
I'm trying to think of but I'm trying to think of okay. What are the weaknesses? Give me the glaring weaknesses on this team.
Star power.
Okay, so does star power equate to scoring?
No, like if you had to rank, again, this is all based on the individual. If I was to tell you who on this Warriors team is a top 25 player in the league?
Nobody.
Well, Curry. But that's it. That's what I mean as far as star power.
Yeah, and I'm the guy that I believe that the NBA more than any other sport, because it's just 5 dudes that you need stars in order to win. That's been the template, right? It started with the Boston Celtics when they had Garnett and they had Pierce and they had Paul Allen.
Yeah, you've always needed stars or good players to win.
Yes, it's
great players.
That's the way. But maybe the Warriors, because we're beginning to see this, where teams now, when it comes to money, are they're tightening the books a little bit. And so there's always got to be that watershed moment where somebody does it a different way. Just like when the NBA started this whole thing with the big 3 in Boston and Big Baby Davis and company, and they won that title. And then they became, okay, LeBron says, well, let me get my boys. Calls up Bosh and says, Dwayne Wade, we're coming to Miami. And then everybody was doing it. Things are cyclical in this league. And now that the money is what it is, I think what this could be is potentially a different way to skin this baby.
I think that this is sustainable for the regular season.
It's not stars, but the one concern you have with the Warriors is who's going to score the basketball if it's not Steph. Okay? So if Steph's going to give you points, if Buddy Hield's going to give you points, and if Wiggins can give you points and Kuminga can give you points, and then suddenly you're getting stuff from Lindy Waters. I mean, this sounds like a guy who's drinking that Kool-Aid, right?
Told me to put down the pipe.
No doubt. But there is a way here. And just simply because they don't have the star power and it's 13 guys, is that the reason why we should say this isn't going to happen?
So who's the leading scorer tonight for the Warriors?
Wiggins or Kuminga. I think Kuminga over the last 2 days, he's got his confidence back.
Curious to see how much he plays tonight with Wiggins being back.
Oh, he'll play.
Well, he's going to play, but 30 minutes? Got another man in rotation. I'll tell you who I think is going to be the leading scorer at 4 o'clock when Warriors Live starts right here on 95.7 The Game prior to the 5 o'clock tip against the Houston Rockets. First game of a 5-game roadie. As that'll do it here for Warriors this week. As always, Dan Devone. Appreciate you.
Don't forget it's Sarah and Reardon later today.
Oh yeah, Steven Risotto is going to be out there, right? Yeah, say what's up. Is it officially basketball season, or is this still football? Steve.
Oh, it's football season at the R.
Oh, we're talking football.
Dude, hoops. I thought it was hoops too.
Oh, okay.
I can't lie. Oh boy. All right, football season still wrapping up here as basketball season's in its infancy, and the Warriors are 4-1. So we'll see if they can keep it rolling. Next time I talk to you, we'll have 4 games to break down, and Dan's got it going basically 3-1 until then, including a win against Boston. We'll see. For Cam Williams, for Steven Risotto, for Dan DeVoe, my name is Evan Giddings. Thank you for listening to this edition of Warriors This Week. Thanks to everyone who has tuned in, who has chimed in, who has called in. We'll talk to you next time here on 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs?